All right, let's get it. Drive time, Tuesday afternoon, about 8 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. The sun is shining, which is always nice. It is cold, but a little sunshine and clear skies here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah on this Tuesday afternoon. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That young man is Porter Larson behind the glass, producing the program today and doing some good work this morning up on the hill. It's not very often we get to hear from Coach Witt and Utah coaches in the dead of winter, but we did today. And if you missed it, if you've not heard it in its entirety, we're going to bring it to you coming up at about 4 o'clock today. On the program, as you can imagine, a lot of questions about the roster overhaul. About 52% of the team is going to be new next year. A lot of questions about transfer portal. A lot of questions about NIL, a lot of questions about a new coaching staff, a lot of questions about a new quarterback, a new running back room, offensive personnel, Jason Beck, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Morgan Scalley speaking, little light shed on the situation with Cameron Rising and Dorian Singer, a couple of names that are still out there. And so we'll get to that. And then Coach Witt was asked about Keanu Tanavasa and Cam Calhoun taking off, the two names that really seem to have bummed out Ute fans the most, understandably so. Both those young men are really, really good football players. So we'll react to some of that stuff on the program today. And, of course, the wild card weekend in pro football came to a close last night with just a masterclass from Sean McVay and the LA Rams for a number of different reasons. We'll talk about them today. What's next for Sam Darnold and what's next for the Minnesota Vikings under center? Do they move on to J.J. McCarthy? Where will Sam Darnold land? And, of course, look ahead to the weekend that I would say most people believe is the best weekend of pro football playoff action, which is the divisional round. Now, conference championship round is obviously awesome, but you do get 2 Saturday games and 2 Sunday games. I got to say, all these games are intriguing for different reasons. Some of the lines are a little loose. You got the Chiefs as an 8-point favorite over the Texans at Arrowhead. Lions getting a full 10 points over the upstart Commanders at Ford Field in Detroit, Michigan. They're a 10-point favorite. The aforementioned Los Angeles Rams head to Lincoln Financial to take on Philly, and the Eagles are actually getting 6.5. That line stands out to me. I think it's a little high. Rams match up well with Philly. We'll tell you why. We'll talk about it. And then what should be, I don't know, man, it feels like a generationally, potentially historic matchup. The Baltimore Ravens take their act on the road to Orchard Park at Highmark Stadium to take on the Buffalo Bills. And Baltimore opened as a 1-point favorite, and that's where it is now, which I find really interesting. That over-under is 51.5, which means a lot of points will be scored, and it should be a close game down the stretch. Utah women in action tonight, the number 23 team in the nation. They're taking on the Baylor Bears on the road. 6 o'clock Mountain Time start. The television coverage is ESPN+. And then, of course, you can hear the action on this little radio station right about the time we say good night, just before 6 o'clock. BYU welcomes in Oklahoma State, the team that Utah men's basketball beat on Saturday for their first Big 12 win. Utah Hockey Club in action against the Montreal Canadiens. I'm going to head down to the Delta Center tonight to check out that game. Been a minute since I've been able to get there to see the hockey club, so excited for that. Utah men's basketball back in action tomorrow against TCU on the road. BYU went down to TCU. They got beat, so we'll see. Utah Jazz with one more night off. They welcome in a Charlotte Hornets team that has like half their roster on the injury report every single game. So Jazz schedule kind of evens up a little bit. We're inching a little bit closer and closer towards the All-Star break. And Utah State men's basketball, they're 16-1 because of course they are. They're on the road against UNLV tomorrow. Bevy of NBA action tonight. Jerry Jones is falling in love with the bright, shiny new toy, which is never a good idea. Never lasts. Maybe you have a few years of bliss and then it's over. Deion Sanders is that shiny new toy. Does this make any sense at all? We'll talk about it on the show. Bevy of guests today. Good guests list booked by Porter today. We're going to start things off NBA Daily Assist style with Tim McMahon from ESPN, one of our favorites. The great Ben McMahon stops by. Mike Yam, formerly of the Pac-12 Network, now with the NFL Network. Mike stops by to talk some pro football coming up. As I reference, we will replay Sound from the Hill, Coach Witt, Morgan Scalley, etc. That'll come your way at 4 o'clock. And then live in studio, I don't know, find something else to do at 4:30 because Dave Fox will be here. Dave Fox rolls live in the studio. We'll do what we do, me and Dave. I was on television with Dave last night, 10:35 KMYU. We call it 5 Questions with Spence, of course, our kid, because Dave is my guy. We'll do a little college football, some pro football, some jazz with Dave coming up. RSL is signing an Australian striker. I'm not going to sit here and be like, totally been smashing Australian soccer tape. But reinforcements on the way for the soccer club. We're going to have a couple of RSL front office members over the course of the week to try to get a little bit better of an understanding as to what exactly they're doing after a historic year where they set the club record for points and goals scored and finished third on the table and went to the postseason. They are having a fire sale. Most of the attacking portion of their 11 gone, and we'll see what they do to kind of get things going in the right direction. But a lot to do on the program today. Tim McMahon, Mike Yam, little Utah football sound, Dave Fox, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. And that young man, Porter Larson, our resident Cowboy fan. Prime time? Huh? How do you feel?
It's a good question because it's exciting in some ways, but it's just so Cowboys, right? It's flashy, it's splashy, but it's a guy who's never coached an NFL football game before. Listen, he's been successful at everything he's done, so I'm okay if that is the move and taking that chance. It's a hell of a lot better than running it back with Mike McCarthy, standing there with his headset and oblivious look on his face. But I don't know that I'm like guaranteeing a Super Bowl with the Deion Sanders at the helm. I do think it would bring some excitement. I do think it would bring energy to the Cowboys that they've needed for a long time. How that looks on the football field and long term, especially, I don't really know.
And only time will tell. It just feels like a very Cowboy move, but Deion has done a great job to turn Colorado completely around in 2 years. That was a dormant, irrelevant program. So we'll see. But plenty to do on this Tuesday afternoon. Happy Tuesday to you. Hope you're off to a great start to that work week. The ESPN 700 Cash Kickoff is here. It's time for your shot to win $1,000 cash to pay your bills. Text DEPOSIT right now to 508-771-1000, 777-1000. Excuse me. Text DEPOSIT to 508-777-1000 for a chance to win $1,000 in cash in this nationwide contest. Good luck from those of us here at ESPN 700. All right, first guest right out of the gates will be Tim McMahon for a little hoop. But before we get to Tim, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends too at Standard Restaurant Supply, your one-stop shop for all your tailgate needs here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Online at standardrestaurantsupply.com on a Tuesday. Time now for your opening tip. So we don't typically have the opportunity to hear from Coach Witt and Morgan Scalley, Jason Beck, et cetera, youth coaches, during the dead of winter. Typically back in the day, National Signing Day or maybe a special occasion, but kind of a state of the program situation today up on the Hill. And obviously, in order to be fair and unpack all of the comments in their context without trying to misrepresent anything that was said, we'll just simply play it for you. Coming up at 4 o'clock today, so set your timers for that in case you missed it. Other places you can grab it. But Porter, you were there, and kind of reading through the transcripts and the social media reaction. I feel like the biggest piece of news that most people are focusing on is we do have a little bit more clarity on the situation with Cameron Rising. I never thought he was going to be back. We talked about it pretty much all of last year. Then at the end of the season, when it became clear that that was an option, it just felt like, a marriage that was good for a few years, and you look at the other person and you say, thanks for the memories, give them a hug, and then you go your separate ways and life goes on. But Coach Witt, quote, I have talked with Cam a few times. I'll let him divulge his plans, but he's no longer on our roster, and we'll let him announce what his plans are when he wants to. So that, as far as what news is, and the definition of news being that which is extraordinary, that's probably the number one piece of news people are focusing on. But what were your main takeaways with the presser up on the Hill today?
I'm with you there. I think that for the most part, that was a remaining question mark, was not if Cam was going to be here, be your starting quarterback. That's ship is kind of sailed. But would he be in the room? Would he be your signal caller, or I don't know, assistant to a quarterback coach up there? I don't know what Cam's future plans are. I know he does want to continue playing football, and in those opportunities, I'm sure will be there. I don't know in which form, but we'll let him make that decision. And like you said, kind of a state of the program, recruiting recap. Things that stood out to me were Kyle's, he highlighted that there are 30 new faces on this roster for the spring. They finalized the spring roster. If you go onto the Utes website right now, the 2025 spring roster is live with the latest updated changes. There are 30 new faces, Spence, and 11 of them, I think, are between the quarterback and the running back room. 10 or 11 of them, right? And maybe another one. So for me, that's kind of the main thing I'm watching going into spring. Of course, the defense has to replace Keanu Tanavasa. The defense has to replace Cam Calhoun. We can talk NIL all you want. We'll continue to do it all offseason. Yay. But if we're talking about the football, that's the main thing that stood out to me is what the quarterback room, what the running back room will look like. Because if you're looking at those two places right now, man, there's not a single face outside of Isaac Wilson that is a familiar one. Every player on the running back room comes from a different school. Every player in the quarterback room outside of Isaac Wilson comes from another school, and he even was in the transfer portal this offseason. So that's kind of the thing that stood out to me, and the thing that I'll be mostly paying attention to as the weeks roll on and spring gets here.
You buried the lead. You want to talk football? You want to talk football on a Tuesday, Porter? Do you want to get NIL
Yes.
out of the discussion? No more transfer portal. Do you want to talk? Do you want to talk X's and O's and meat and potatoes of football or not? You tell me.
I just know how much the conversation, how much our lives are going to be dominated by the NIL and the portal stuff for like the next 3 years. 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is. So I'm just like, let's talk some ball.
Well, if you want to do that, then you completely missed the mark, because obviously the biggest takeaway was, quote, Jason Beck, quote, we've done a lot of 11 personnel at Syracuse.
I did notice
did a
there's
lot of
nothing
10
at 13.
personnel. We did a lot of 2 tight ends and 3 wide receiver personnel and used Dampier as the runner last year. If you want to talk football, Porter, that's where we start the conversation today.
And when I was sitting in that press conference, I almost wanted to be kind of a little smart aleck and say, I didn't hear any 13. I didn't hear a single mention from Jason Beck about 13 or 14 personnel. That has me concerned.
Did you get the chills when he talked about 2 tight end sets? Tell me the truth.
Honestly, I was a little underwhelmed. I want 3 tight ends.
Well, you know my take. Every player on the field should be a tight end. Kicker, kick return, offensive lineman, quarterback, running back. There should not be a position that's played in football that is not played by somebody who technically is a tight end. But that's just me.
Now, to be clear, what I did like about what Jason answered in that question is that he's like, I don't really care if they're a tight end, right? I don't care if they're a wide receiver. I'm going to put the player, the skill set that I want in that position, right? And that's exactly what Utah needs, and that's exactly what this landscape of college football calls for, because you're going to be switching players. You're going to be trying to fit different pieces into your system every year.
I will say this. I felt like after listening to Jason today, I'm like, yeah, I can see why Kyle kind of digs him. And Morgan, too. I mean, we talked about this at the time, because I do think there were a lot of Utah football fans that were hoping this hire would be more of like I don't even know how to characterize it, something that's a little bit different than what they've seen. I feel like a lot of Ute fans around the market, I feel like maybe the offense has been a little bit stagnant, ignoring the injuries, of course, and whether or not the play calling was something that needed to be addressed. I don't mean to relitigate a decision that was already made, and there's no use in talking about it again. I just never thought Andy Ludwig was like the issue. And, when Mike Bajakian was able to address the media for the first time after he took the job, he said the quiet part out loud, as the kids would say. this is Andy's system. Like, we're not changing the system. This was installed by Andy Ludwig, and if given the opportunity, I would have been able, I would have loved to ask Mike, like, what can you do with Andy's system that Andy himself couldn't do? And the answer turned out to be nothing. So after listening to Jason today, and you guys are going to hear from him, if you haven't heard Jason Beck today, I think you'll understand exactly why Coach Witt and Morgan, who's definitely has a hand in all this stuff, were attracted to hiring him as an offensive coordinator, as a guy that knows the landscape of our state, playing at Brigham Young, because, of course, the cross-pollination is undeniable. Coach Witt was also asked about, as I referenced, Keanu Tanavasa and Cameron Calhoun, the two departures that seem to really, really sting Ute fans, and quite frankly, will sting for a while, because both those dudes are probably pro players. And they're going to go on to Bama and BYU, and they're going to play really well. And Kyle essentially said this is all NIL. Said the overriding factor in their decision was NIL. As we've discussed, Keanu, his family, very steeped in their religious reasoning, the religiosity that was expressed on social media. All good. That's part of life. Everybody has a different belief system. I'm not here to judge one way or the other, but I do think it was interesting to hear Kyle say today that essentially it was NIL. Not too surprising when it comes to Tuscaloosa, but I do think it raises the question, like, does BYU have more assets at their disposal with their collective than Utah does if Keanu simply was paid more to go 35, 40 miles down south? And a bunch of other takeaways as well. So Kyle Whittingham, Jason Beck, Morgan Scally will bring all of these conversations and comments to you guys at 4 o'clock today, so stay tuned for that. We will start things off as far as the guest side goes with Tim McMahon to do a little hoop on a Tuesday. Jazz with a night off tonight. Jimmy Butler reiterates his desire to be traded by the Miami Heat. Will the Jazz be active prior to the trade deadline? We'll bring in Tim today. Our good buddy Mike Yam stops by from the NFL Network, formerly of the Pac-12 Network, for some college and pro football. Utah's presser from this morning, Dave Fox later on. We'll say goodnight in time for Utah women's hoops. Should be a good one. The number 23 ranked Lady Utes taking on Baylor, and that comes your way at about 5:45 tonight. It is The Drive on a Tuesday, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700.
living for the good time. The only way we know. It's the birds and the bees and the dogwood trees that deep down in your soul.
What annoys me, what irks me, I guess. And so last night he sent me an Instagram reel. I don't know, man. Of those two, I think they're brothers, and they've released a song. And I don't think the audio enough does it justice. And so I sent it to you, Porter, and I guess this is something you've seen before, because Randy Scott and some other Sports Center, I don't know. If it's not Van Pelt, I don't watch it anymore, but Randy Scott seems like a nice enough dude. So 2 Sports Center anchors released a parody of that, which I thought was pretty funny. But do you know what the origin story is of this new musical tune that is sweeping the world of country music?
I mean, it's sweeping the world of country music, ironically, right? It's very much because it's corny and not good and funny in a way. And these kids are like, yes, I think they're brothers, and they're trying to do the country music Nashville thing, but they're just don't got it, right? To be completely honest. But it's like endearing enough that people are sharing it and having a good time with it. But Spence, it's this trend that is much wider than our 2 friends we just heard from, of people on Instagram who have the help of AI making just atrocious music. And because they have, I don't know, 1,000 followers, put it out there. Someone's got to hear it.
The one you sent me in response, I can't even explain.
We're not putting that one on the radio.
No, I mean, and look, God bless everybody for trying, yes. Right? Like, I don't mean to like come across as a bully.
I've done very bad radio before, just to be clear.
It's happening right now. It could be.
Actually, it is, yeah.
Hopefully we're doing a little bit better than we
At least it's
did
entertaining.
5 or 6 years ago. I was just stunned because really you should wait until you learn to sing before releasing. Well, I don't know. Like, you know.
You're right.
Back in the day.
There's a process.
Yeah, not to be the old crusty dude, but you didn't really hear someone's art until it was ready for public consumption. And I think that's one of the downsides of social media, because all it takes, like, my mom thinks I'm hilarious. Like, if it was up to my mother, I'd be the biggest stand-up comic in the world.
Right.
But, like, you need a little bit more than encouragement from your grandmother when you were 5 who said you could really sing to, like, release a video.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. These guys have a good mom. I can tell by the videos they put out.
Sure they do.
Their mom is awesome.
And I bet that she
super
loves
supportive.
It. God bless her. I'm not one that wades into comment sections very often, but I knew, I'm like, this has to be.
Yeah.
And one of them was like, hey, just real quick, ignore all of the positive comments you're going to receive. This is horrible. I was like, oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, we have pivoted a little bit to do 6 minutes on a random brother duo that released a horrible country music song. God bless you, too. We are going to move Tim McMahon to a little bit later in the show. So, Porter, I'll let you kind of drive the ship here. We're going to do some sound, and we've got Coach Witt, we've got Morgan, and we've got Coach Beck, correct?
Yeah, so they did a press conference earlier this morning, and kind of just one after another. It wasn't together, but kind of on similar footing as far as the state of the program goes. So we'll start with the head ball coach, I think, and then get to the other guys.
All right, so we will bring Tim McMahon in a little bit earlier. Don't forget, Mikey M's going to stop by to do some pro football, but we don't get a lot of sound these days from the Utah coaching staff, so here he is, the head ball coach himself, Kyle Whittingham.
Opening statement. Okay. Well, we're here today. A few reasons, other than giving you guys something to do, is never had a chance to really talk about recruiting, staff changes, and that type of thing. So I'll have just a brief intro here and then let you guys ask almost anything you want to ask, and then we'll proceed from there. So first of all, like every single program in the country, felt like we did a good job in recruiting. It was a blend of portal players and high school players coming in at the break, 30 altogether, 30 new faces, scholarship players at mid-year. There'll be another 12 to 16 that we add in the summertime, which will make for a over 50% roster makeover or the additions. And so that's the nature of college football now. That's something that is going to be, as long as the rules are what they are, in place. We did have an exceptionally large senior class based on the last several years, so that added to the turnover as well. But we're pleased with what we got out of the portal. Thought we had a net positive portal experience during the time it was open. Feel really good about the new hires on offense and what they bring to the table. Jason Beck, our offensive coordinator, excited about his schemes and his energy and what he'll bring. And then Mark Atawaya is our new running back coach from Washington State and has proven to have a lot of energy as well. You may have seen a couple posts that he made in the recent last 3 or 4 weeks. And then Micah Simon will coach our receivers. And so that is the change in the full-time staff. We've also had some analyst changes and so forth, but those are the changes with the full-time guys. So that being said, what questions do you have?
Go ahead. Hey, Kyle, can you talk about your quarterback situation with Devin Dampier and Isaac Wilson coming back? And you still haven't really heard from Cam Rising, but
Yeah.
where does your quarterback room stand right now?
It's almost a complete makeover. Isaac is the only scholarship quarterback that's returning. He tested the waters, the portal waters, determined that he wanted to be here when all was said and done, so we were excited that he decided to return. Devin Dampier obviously is a big addition for us, coming from New Mexico, same place obviously that our coordinator came from, and so knows the offense inside and out. And we have 3 other QBs that scholarship QBs we've added to the room, and so we feel like we're in good shape. Now that being said, we felt like we're in good shape last year and ended up being on our 5th guy by the end of the season. So you got to hopefully stay healthy, and that'll be a big key. But the 2 big makeover rooms were the QB room and the running back room. Complete overhaul in the running back room. No returners, all brand new guys. So we like the guys that we brought in, obviously. So we'll see how they fare in spring. 4 of the 5 new running backs are here now. We'll have 1 addition in the summer, and then we'll find another one. We need to get to 6. That's our budget for running backs. Yeah.
And Tanavasa and Calhoun, those guys would have been starters on defenses, presumably, if they returned, but they didn't. How much did NIL play into it?
The absolute overriding factor was NIL. There's no doubt about it, in my opinion. And Cam ended up at a school in the Southeast Conference, and he would have been battling for a starting job, just like last year he was in that rotation. And Keanu was a very good player for us last year, but they both felt that it was made more sense to move on for their own reasons. But NIL is something that was certainly in the equation.
Kyle, looking at what Jason Beck did last year in New Mexico, what does he do on offense in terms of schemes and philosophy that kind of meshes with what you want to do here at Utah?
Yeah, well, it's more wide open, more spread formations, a lot of Q run game. Not quite as much implementation of the tight ends, although that being said, Jason is a really good judge of talent, who to use, getting the most out of each guy and tweaking things to fit the personnel, which is really critical, in football, obviously, is to play to the strengths of your players and not try to put a square peg in a round hole, and that's something that he's done a really good job of through the years.
Coach, a lot of the attention is on the players that left, but you held on to a lot of good players with NIL. What does that say about the support around the program and the program itself? Yeah,
we're doing what we can NIL-wise. It's always a challenge, and you always are wanting for more. I mean, that's the discrepancy between most schools and some of the real upper echelon schools is dramatic, and it's 5-6 times the amount of resources at some of those schools as other P4 schools, and so it's far from a level playing field, but we feel like we're able to hang on to the nucleus of our roster with a few exceptions. And going forward with the rev share, that's some people think that's going to level the playing field. I don't, because the other schools will still have pots of money coming from somewhere. So it's I still don't think that's going to be the solution, but that's the direction we're going, at least in the near future.
A couple of years ago, you said that the top 25 would pretty quickly reflect the top 25 NIL.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if a couple of years in, if that's what you're seeing, are there tiers with, when you say the upper echelon, are there tiers within the top 25? And what do those look like? Which is a long way of saying what should be a realistic goal for your team based on where you sit with NIL.
Yeah, we hear some schools have 30+ million of NIL resources, and some schools have 5. And so that's, like I said, there's a big discrepancy. I'm not privy to everybody's NIL budget, so I can't tell you exactly, compartmentalized or in tiers, but I just know that the team that will ultimately win it, either Ohio State and Notre Dame, is both those are very, very well funded NIL-wise, to my knowledge. Again, I don't have the hard numbers, but just what you hear.
Kind of in the same vein of revenue sharing and NIL, obviously when you have a smaller budget, I'm sure you have to kind of crunch the numbers a bit, choose what positions you want to go after. I'm curious from your perspective, how did you guys approach that this offseason in terms of NIL and revenue sharing? Was it a retaining philosophy? I mean, walk me through that.
Yeah, retention is your primary concern, but you've also got to have an influx of new talent, so it's not your only concern, obviously. We use an NFL model. The NFL, as far as weighted, the positions that are weighted, the more valued positions, and the more, the positions you sink more money into, that's the bottom line. We use that, on an Excel spreadsheet and had it all mapped out, and we adhered to that pretty close. There's a few discrepancies here and there, but for the most part, where the NFL is sinking their resources into position-wise, we followed that same blueprint.
Starting defensive tackles. Do you feel like you can do that from within, or is that going to be a priority in the spring portal?
That's a question that will be answered through spring. We have 3 returners that we really like, and then 4 freshmen that we're going to get a look at. We won't get a look at all of them this spring. We'll get a look at 3 of them and see what they can do, and then make a decision after that, because the portal will reopen. The 15th of April, I believe it is. And so if we need, and that goes for every position, if there's a position that we feel needs to be bolstered or we're a little thin at, then we'll continue to shop the portal at that time, and we have some room in the roster to do just that. We will have room in the roster.
Coach, how do you go about reinventing sort of the way you establish your culture in the program with NIL?
Yeah, it's more challenging, obviously, with more guys new than returners in the fall. It's not quite as simple as it used to be, but we have a very strong culture here. The guys that are returning, it's up to them to educate, indoctrinate, the new guys into how we do things, and we have a certain way of doing things here, and we expect that to continue. But again, it's a little more of a challenge, but just because of the numbers that you're dealing with.
Coach, we'll ask Jason when he comes up here, but you've expressed dissatisfaction in the throw game the last couple of years. Does he have more of a emphasis on getting those big chunk yardage plays downfield?
Well, we want to be very balanced offensively, and I think that's something that he's done a great job of, is being balanced in his offense. And to me, the perfect season is 3,500 plus throwing and 2,500 plus rushing. If you get 6,000 yards in the regular season, that's 500 a game, and you're really humming. You're humming along, and so that would be ideal. Whether we get to that or not, we'll see. But they were pretty darn close to that in New Mexico last year, I can tell you that.
You said that Isaac's the only returning scholarship quarterback, which implies that Cam's not coming back. Do you know what his plans are?
I've talked to Cam a few times, but that is really up to Cam to divulge that when he wants to divulge what his plan is. But we've certainly had communication, and you don't see him on our roster right now, so that's can tell you some things right there. But I would leave that up to Cam to outline exactly what his plan is.
Kyle, I'm curious to talk a little bit about Devin Dampier and Wayshawn Parker.
Okay.
What have you seen from them on tape that can, I guess, spread your offense around a little bit more and do what you might have not been able to do last year?
Well, Devin is a true, in every sense of the word, dual threat quarterback. I mean, he's a terrific runner. He's a very good thrower. We expect to get his completion percentage bumped up a little bit this year. We think that'll happen just through maturity and familiarity in the system. But he's a guy that he was only sacked 4 times last year, and that wasn't because of stellar protection all the time. He is very mobile in the pocket, has great pocket awareness, and to be, that's a remarkable stat to only have 4 sacks. And so we think that he's obviously the perfect fit for this offense. He is. I mean, he proved it last year, and so we're excited to have him continue doing here what he pick up where he left off from New Mexico.
What's the specific challenge in the running back room of carrying on your identity and culture? Been going on for 10, 15 years of kind of backs with that identity. No returning backs and a new running back coach. What's the challenge there?
Well, we expect to continue to be efficient in the run game. I think coach at New Mexico was 250 yards or thereabouts plus a game. And I didn't answer your question about Wayshawn Parker. He is really a tough, physical running back, can run inside, can run outside, has great contact balance, breaks tackles, yards after contact, and he was just a freshman last year. I mean, he's got a big upside, and we're excited about what he can do, and saw a bunch of that on tape. And back to your question, I'm really old, so I forgot what you just said. What was your question? The challenge of the running back. Yeah. Well, we expect to, man, you get any water? Thank you. We expect to continue to be physical in the run game. That's been our calling card for a lot of years. And we don't, if you look at the numbers of Coach's offense through the years, then it's not a pass-happy, just throw the ball around the parking lot. It's very balanced, like I said, and relies heavily on the run game. And I'm sure he'll give you more, clarity on that when he talks.
Last one.
Coach, can you talk about the potential possibility of Dorian Singer returning for 2025?
Yeah, that's being worked on. It's you got to have a case. You got to have reasons why. Much like the young man at Vanderbilt that got his extra year, and so Dorian would like nothing more than to return with us. I can't give you percentages or anything like that. I can tell you that it's in process right now, and we're trying every which way to see if we can get him one more year. I know the NC2A is talking about going 5 years to play 5, and if that is in fact adopted, what's the criteria as far as how it's implemented? Is it guys that just finished that didn't have all 5 years, did they get to come back? Does it start with a new freshman somewhere in between? We don't know that, but the bottom line is we would love to have Dorian in the program for another year if we can somehow make that work.
All right, thanks a lot.
That's it. Okay, gotcha.
Really nice to get a little clarity on a lot of things that simply have been topical around town. A little bit of an unceremonious ending to an otherwise incredible career for Cameron Rising, and I hope everybody just remembers him the way he deserves to be remembered, even though the final couple of years were not what anybody was expecting or hoping for, including Cam. So if you missed it, Utah's moving forward, new quarterback room, and Coach Witt said in due time, Cam will let everybody know what his plans are. I would imagine he's going to find another place to play and hopefully make a little money before having to face the real world and bills and adulting. You should put that off as long as you can, maybe up until you're 75, if you have that in you. So we'll stay tuned to try to understand what's next for Cameron Rising. Porter, the Dorian Singer storyline, I find pretty fascinating. Now, I think we're all under the assumption that Devin Dampier is getting that starting job, and Devin's stats in the throw game last year weren't necessarily awesome. He's more of a rushing threat. But Dorian's one of those guys, and I always kind of harken back to Darren Carrington, who reminds me of him because the talent is obvious. And I don't know, man, every time I watch Devon Vele crush it for Denver, I'm like, what kind of numbers would Vele have put up if Cameron was healthy all year? But how did you digest hearing the news that they're still potentially working on getting Dorian Singer back on campus for one more year?
Yeah, well, it would be huge. Obviously, you mentioned that the talent there is pretty undeniable. We saw flashes of Dorian Singer, really, really good wide receiver, good range, good route runner. He's got really most of the tools that you want to be the next level kind of player. But again, you mentioned you got to have the quarterback there as well. The other part about this, Spence, is that Devin Dampier and this kid have some history, right? They go back all the way to their childhood. So not only would it be welcoming for Devin Dampier in the sense that they know each other, but he's also the kind of wide receiver that is super friendly to a quarterback, right? A broken play, say, Devin Dampier's rolling out and is trying to make something on the go. He's a guy that finds open lanes and is a possession receiver when you get him the ball in tight spaces. So really a quarterback-friendly type of wide receiver, in addition to having a bunch of intangible tools that make him maybe a prospect at the next level. But that's on top of those two having a chemistry that goes back to being like Gremlins or Mighty Mites or whatever it was back then.
Gremlin, Mighty Mites. Mine were definitely Gremlin.
I think I was both at one point. It's a
Mighty Mites.
It's a tier system.
Pop Warner back in the day. Shout out West High. West High Pop Warner.
I don't know about that. But.
No, I played for the West Side Pop Warner teams before we moved back east. You should see the football picture that I have with some buddies. It's like 3 Federal Heights white kids and then all polys.
I was going to say the West teams that we faced, man, they I think they hit puberty before us, or at least they were bringing in kids that were a lot larger than the little tykes from Camas.
I have this picture. You know what? I'm going to send you the picture of me playing Pop Warner with the other West Side kids. Our quarterback was Teddy Davis, who tragically was shot and killed in high school. He was the West Side quarterback. His dad was our coach. But yeah, it was like 3 Federal Heights white kids in all polys.
Yeah, we when we were Gremlins, that's like the first year, we went undefeated. We beat everyone. And then we faced Dalton Schultz and the Bingham Miners. And they
Are you Dalton's age?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are the same age. I guess that makes sense. I'm going to try to find this picture. You're going to get a kick out of it. I'm number 21, wide out, quick, defensive back. Couldn't be counted on for those, crushing, bone-jarring hits or anything.
No, little guy.
But we had plenty of backup for that. Okay, nobody gives a rip. But if you miss Coach Witt, just hop in your car. Coach Witt, Coach Scally, and Coach Beck addressed the media today, and we're going to play Jason and Morgan a little bit later because we do need a break to get to Mike Yam. Want to make sure we get to all the pro football storylines with Mike. We'll look back on the wild card weekend, look ahead to the divisional round coming up, but I want to tell you about the Auto Expo. We'll be out there on remote because that's how we roll. 2025 Utah International Auto Expo returns to the Mountain America Expo Center, showcasing the latest cars, trucks, SUVs, crossovers, EVs, exotics. Wow, look at that. And more, all in a no-pressure, non-selling environment, so you can explore the 2025 models and discover a wide range of options from hybrids to plug-in hybrids to EVs and traditional gas vehicles, helping you find the perfect fit for your lifestyle. New this year, the Adventure Utah display celebrates the state's love for the great outdoors. You can experience the latest off-road vehicles, ATVs, side-by-sides, towable trailers, and boats designed for adventure. Whether you're planning to conquer Utah's 1,000 lakes or explore its vast trail network, this showcase has what you need. Starts on Friday. Goes to 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Friday. Also Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Martin Luther King Day. It's 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. So check it out. It's the Mountain America Expo Center, 9575 South State Street in Sandy. Plenty of free parking on site. And here's the information for tickets. Advanced admission to the event is $12 for adults. That goes through the 16th. Then it's $15, $7 for seniors 62 and over, military, first responders as well. If you purchase it online at autoshowutah.com, children 12 and under are admitted free with a paying adult all days. So visit autoshowutah.com, follow Utah Auto Expo on Facebook, and Utah Auto Expo on Instagram. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Some pro football with our buddy Mike Yam coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Got a big one tonight for the Utah women. They're taking on Baylor. Comes your way at about 5:45. The Utah women, number 23 in the country. Utah men picked up their first Big 12 win over the weekend, so stay tuned for that. But every once in a while, Porter sends me the rundown, and I see a guest that just puts a big old smile on my face because I know we're going to have a good time. We're going to have a good time right now with our buddy Mikey Yam, formerly of the Pac-12 Network. That's how we became familiar. Now he's moved on to bigger and better things with the NFL Network. Mr. Yam, happy Tuesday, sir. How are you?
Oh, always appreciate the invite, man. Always good to hear your voice, and I'm glad. Like, let's have some fun. And by the way, you said it, and I know we've obviously been in full effect. We got a whole football season, but when I hear Utah men's basketball just picked up their first Big 12 win, I pause for like a half a second and go, yeah, that still seems weird to me.
Oh, man. No, it's entirely weird. It's still weird. I mean, we had Ted Robinson on prior to the Notre Dame game. We had Yogi on Monday. And, I mean, I know all you guys through the Pac-12 Network, even though everybody's gone on to land on their feet like I knew you all would. But let's stay in the space for just a second because I actually I got on the phone this morning with Rick Neuheisel because I'm emceeing a dinner with him tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, you are going to have an absolute – can you please tell him? I swear, I was just thinking about him because I was listening to him on radio. I really do. I miss him tremendously, and I've been thinking, hey, as soon as national championship game is over, I'm going to give him a buzz. So please tell him I said hello.
No, I will for sure, and I can't wait because Rick is the type – so I've got to interview him in front of this, like, very powerful audience because Rick is Rick, I'll just ask a question, then sit back for like 20 minutes.
And you're good.
Yeah. So you're
totally good.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. But we were reminiscing a little bit on the Pac-12, the old Pac-12 days, and he ran something by me. And when I saw you on the rundown, I'm like, Mike would be good on this because, when we talked about when Rick would used to join the show, when we were in the Pac-12 footprint, I said something along the lines of, the leadership just kind of really let everybody down. And that's not something he disputed, but he had a really interesting take. He said, I think George Kliavkoff gets too much heat for this. He puts it at the feet of university presidents that thought the TV deal should have been more valuable than it was when George brought it to the table. His assertion is the administrators and the president should have just said, this is what we can get. Let's go to market with it, and let's just keep the league alive as opposed to pushing back. That was kind of the first time I've ever heard a really smart person put it that emphatically. Mike, I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
So Rick's definitely not wrong, and I think there's a lot of people in those circles. I'll use air quote around those because I don't know exactly who those people are, other than describe them as the people in the know, right? Like those inner circles at the conference level, at the university level, presidents, athletic directors, like the group that understands a lot of the nuance around the decisions. I do. Here's the only pushback that I would have on what Rick said. And he's not wrong about the amount of heat that George got. What I will say is George inherited a situation where he knew the answers, or he at least knew the questions to the test before he had to take it. And the reason we are netting out where we are now, I think he's got to take some blame for it. Now, I don't know if he takes all the blame for it because I think Rick's other point about the university presidents maybe being a little misguided on what the value of those media rights were and getting the deal that would keep the league together might not have been this gaudy, huge number that would have made national news for all the right reasons. The league made national news for all the wrong reasons, and really changed the trajectory of, athletics on the college side on the West Coast, maybe forever. Now, maybe that's really dramatic because I do think in a couple of years we'll get another round of realignment. I do think there's a world that exists where schools like Utah, the LA schools, Oregon, I'll throw the Arizonas in. I think we might be talking about a little old school Pac-12, just because of the way college athletics is currently set up. Once again, don't think Rick's totally wrong because I think George probably gets a little too much credit for the downfall, and it's not all on him. And I do think the school presidents, in a lot of ways, maybe have skirted by their role in the league dissolving.
While we're in the space, I know you've moved on and you're not plugged in day to day to Utah football, but you also pay attention and. This was a year, Mike, that just was so wild and caught everybody entirely off guard, leading to speculation that maybe Kyle's had enough. And ultimately, he's announced that he's coming back, and they've hired a new offensive coordinator. 41 new players, 53% of the roster will change over. And so for our Ute fan base here that is a little bit nervous about this current state of the program as a result of what we just saw, knowing what you know about Utah football, all the things, Kyle culture. I really feel like this was a moment in time, but not the new normal. But some people are a little bit skeptical. Your confidence level that Kyle can get this thing back on track?
The confidence level is very high because it's Coach Whittingham and what he's been able to accomplish. Now, I do think, and candidly, as I was watching the games this season and I would see him on the sidelines and hear some of the rumblings, is this going to be the last year? And I in my mind, I was like, man, I hope that's not the case. So thrilled he's going to be back because I think college football is better when he is, on the sidelines, at Rice Eccles, having some fun and leading a team and doing it in sort of this old school manner. And I think what's going to be really fascinating, you mentioned the roster turnover. I knew it was a big number. I didn't realize that it was that size. I can't wait to see what the product is this year with that much change because across the country, you're talking about teams that are doing this on the regular. That hasn't been Kyle's, sort of what's the best way of describing it? Not the way that they win, right? Like you're seeing amazing development. I mean, the last couple of years, obviously, around the NFL draft, to do a ton with NFL Network now, and year in and year out, we're talking about Utah football players. And I think there's a development that's happened. Now, he's been able to get into some homes that candidly maybe 10 years ago he wasn't able to. But I think the national attention and the perception of this program has dramatically shifted over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it is, in a positive way. And I think a lot of that had to do with finding some gems, being able to target those guys, recruit them, and then develop them. Talking about 2- and 3-star guys that end up being drafted or finding homes on rosters in the NFL, that's amazing. And I think the state of college football right now is a problem where it's the transfer portal, NIL. And by the way, I think all those things are, generally speaking, I'm for them. I want these guys to make money. I just don't think we're talking about really NIL. I think we're talking about collectives and essentially paying for players. That is a different conversation than the one that is name, image, and likeness, which everyone is throwing out there. That's not really what's happening in college football. So it's a new era, and I want to see how Kyle adapts to it. But something tells me that program in particular is not pulling in kids that aren't Kyle kind of guys, if you know what I mean.
Let me move over here because it's topical today. Coach Witt addressed the media, and Morgan did, Jason Beck, and obviously whenever we can get a little college football sound in the dead of winter for a program that didn't go bowling, it's been pretty topical today. And Coach Witt announcing that they're moving on without Cameron Rising, which isn't surprising, and we have not heard Cameron's plans. Kyle said he would allow Cam to kind of inform the market of what he's going to do next. And I just hope, Mike, that as he walks away, and I think he will be remembered the way that he deserves, but, the last 2 years, it's hard to deny that there was not some frustration about, is he making 7 figures without being, without playing? Now, injuries are injuries, and it's not like he was sandbagging it. The poor kid just couldn't stay healthy. And I just push back on the narrative that he's just some entitled player that didn't want to give it his all, because we saw him when he was right and they won back-to-back Pac-12 championships and went to Rose Bowls, Mike. So as Cameron walks on officially today, based off the info from Kyle, what would you say about, I guess I'll ask you the cheesy, what is his legacy here in Salt Lake?
I think you hit the nail on the head on your assessment, because I see it the same exact way. This is a kid who really performed at a high level, who was well thought of amongst his teammates, even when, he wasn't necessarily playing early on, and was a true leader on that team. Like people are going to talk about the money that these guys are getting now. I think, and we'll just set this up. I'll go macro here. Carson Beck plays at Georgia, says he's going to go to the NFL, same path as Cam Ward. Hey, I'm going to go to the NFL. Schools are probably interested. They were for Cam. The reports obviously were Florida State, and then obviously he goes to Miami. We'll just name those 2 schools. He says NFL. Maybe that drives up his NIL number a little bit. It's probably a smart move. He ends up playing for Cristobal and has a great season. Might be the first quarterback taken off the board in the NFL draft. Great. Carson Beck, Georgia, gets hurt. Says, I'm going to go to the NFL. Oh, wait, I'm going to pump the brakes on that, and I'm going to go make what's the reported number, $3 million to play for Cristobal, right, down in Miami. He's coming off an elbow injury. I think it's a UCL injury, which is the same one, if I'm not mistaken, that Brock Purdy had. There's some concerns coming off of an elbow injury, and yet what's going to happen? Like, he just got paid reportedly $3 million if he can't go. this is just kind of what college football is now. So I think on the Cam Rising front, I'm not surprised. Would we have loved to have seen, this kid go out there, win, the Big 12 and play in a college football playoff, which is candidly where I thought they would be at the start of this past season. I thought they would be in the mix. I thought they would win the conference. I thought, all of these things were going to fall into place for this program, and they didn't. And I would point to injuries as a big reason why. And sometimes the wheels fall off a little bit, unlike the way that you thought it was going to happen. But I think the legacy needs to be a positive one, because there's a lot of great things that he did in that Utah uniform.
One more college football-ish centric question concerning the Utes, then we'll move on to, because I mean, the NFL right now, it has been so fun. Cannot wait for this weekend. But you referenced kind of Kyle's ethos, right? Like the mode of operation and his just kind of the way he's built this thing up. And it's been so admirable. And he's still, to this day, one of the highest respected college coaches in the land. But, it's always been recruit and develop. It's very K-State-ish. There are other schools that are like this, where it's just, we don't care what the stars are next year. If we feel like you are a Utah man, we are going to recruit you. If you're physically able to do what we're asking you and you're mentally able to grasp the task, you can play here and fit in here. And historically speaking, going back to 2004 Fiesta Bowl, Alex Smith, 2008 Sugar Bowl, Brian Johnson, back-to-back Pac-12 championships, Cameron Rising, the most successful Utah teams have been led by third, fourth-year guys that were recruited here, when not a lot of people gave them a shot. Is that still an ethos, a mode that you can build successful programs? I'm dead serious. I really hope the answer is yes, Mike, but I don't know.
I don't think it is. Yeah. And I think that's why I had made reference to this being really fascinating and how Kyle's going to adjust. Like, I would go back, and I give Chris Peterson, who was at Washington, a lot of credit. We see him now on TV working at Fox. I don't know. I've had conversations with Chris over, the years, especially right after he decided to leave and has always been great with me. I don't want to speak for him, but I got to imagine the way college football was going, he saw a lot of this. And I think he probably said to himself, like, hey, is this something that I can really enjoy? Can I have the impact that I want to have on some of these kids with the way the rules are and the way the rules are going to look? For him, answer was no. And now we got Kyle Whittingham, who I think is in that same kind of mindset, right? Like, I think about the way that he builds teams, and I think you described it really well, which is develop and then go and execute. And those teams did. Now, this is a new era. I was working this season on the college football side for the CW, and we had obviously the two Pac-12 teams, and then we had the ACC. I was just down at the Snoop Dogg Bowl, which, by the way, is just really cool for me to say, the Snoop Dogg Bowl. And, I was talking to Jay Norvell because Colorado State was there, and, we have our typical meetings ahead of the game. And Coach was talking candidly about what this new era of college football is. And I think what's fascinating about his comments, and I think Colorado State's in a very different position than Utah is, but apples to apples here with all these coaches thinking kind of the same way, which is got to recruit my guys, got to figure out who's in the portal, navigate this NIL thing. Like, this is different than 10 years ago. And he made the point to me, which was, how am I supposed to go and get a kid who, on a skill position side of things, right, who balls out and puts up big numbers? Well, guess what? I probably have him for a year, because we're not going to have like the NIL cash, like insert big name school that's got that budget. And he goes, that makes the recruiting process maybe a little bit more challenging. He said, like, the path doesn't change. Our ethos doesn't change. What we look for doesn't change. But it is something in the back of our minds that if I got a running back who goes for, video game type numbers, he might be, one and done with my program, because, there might be someone flashing, big paycheck in front of him, and he's not going to say no. And like, that's what, now, once again, different, because Colorado State not in the same position as Utah. I think, what has been able to build and what the university has is significantly, in a better spot than those Rams. But I think it speaks to where we are going with the sport and where we are right now.
Yeah, well said. Well said. All right, moving on, Mike. Before we get back to having a good time, I am mad at you. I am mad at you. You have to know that, okay? So all of my football guests, several from the network, I asked you all the same question preseason, and I said, as a fan of the New York Football Jets, tell me why I should feel good about this thing. Please give me a reason to feel optimistic about this football team that has caused me to suffer my entire life. And as you do, Mike, very eloquently, you gave me several reasons to feel good about the season that just, I mean, I don't know what to say, man. Like, I hope they move on from Aaron. I just think it's not only that he takes ayahuasca and talks to caterpillars, it's that he just can't play quarterback anymore. I mean, that's mostly what I care about. So what's next? Who's going to coach? Who's going to play quarterback? What's the deal in New York?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, I do try to stay positive.
Yes, you do.
So that's probably where we were going with that conversation a ways back. And maybe it speaks to why I shouldn't be a guest on your show anymore, because clearly I was so dead wrong on my assessment trying to keep things positive around that team. I mean, look, if you, and maybe because you are a Jets fan, I don't know if you saw this coming. Even in the worst case scenario, I did not see this happening. And I don't know for the life of me what to make of the state of that franchise. I mean, consider this, right? Like, they get rid of Robert Saleh. Like, it is what it is. Like, you were going to make some changes, fine. But then you trade for Devontae Adams. Like, so then you're saying, like, screw it, let's double down. I would make an argument when you watch Brees coming out of that backfield, their entire offense should have been centered around the running game. And then they double down on the passing game in Aaron's arm. And I get it with Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, but like, they were having success. If you watch, like, running the football and not going with this passing attack, because I think most of us sit there and go, what is Aaron Rodgers now as a quarterback in the NFL? I don't think he's going to be with the Jets. I can't tell you who is going to be pulling the strings there, because here's the other thing. You're NFL Network. I have my NFL email, and it gets blown up with every single interview request. Who's doing what? Breaking news, this. Coverage plans, that. I'm telling you, I can't keep up with the Jets emails alone. They are talking to every human being on the planet, I think, for the roles that are available. So it just makes it really difficult. And they had a head start on this, which is also mind-boggling. Like, this is like me saying, like, just throwing up my hands in the air, Spence. Like, I don't even know what to tell you on who takes that job, because I don't even know if it's a good job at this point. Like, do you sit there and say, what's this roster? What's the direction? Am I going to have full autonomy? And by the way, it's not just the Jets, right? Like, we saw Troy Aikman and his comments about the Dallas Cowboys, and I think perception would be very different with the Jets and the Cowboys. But I think the same things apply there. Like, all these teams who are looking for head coaches, there's issues, whether it's a franchise issue, whether it's a roster issue, pick the problem. And I think for the Jets right now, having some clarity on who's pulling the strings in that front office, what the objectives are going to be, what's the team identity? Because here's the other thing. If Aaron Rodgers isn't there, I don't know what the team identity is. A couple of years ago, I would have said, hey, they're driven by their defense wholeheartedly. I don't know if that's true anymore, and I don't know what to make of that offense. And if we're having a conversation, by the way, about Aaron Rodgers or Garrett Wilson, because that came up, I did a show and Ian Rappaport came on and said, hey, like, they're trying to figure out what direction they're going to go and who's the long-term because of that relationship. What question is there? Garrett Wilson is who you build your team around, age alone, and what he can do. I get frustrated for you because I do see the potential in that franchise and hope they're able to figure it out this offseason.
So here's a wild follow-up, and I've asked a couple people this because I come from a split family. We're a Northeast family with 4 boys, and, obviously my father, and there's 3 Giants fans and 2 Jets fans, and, we're kind of bemoaning where we're at with New York football. If you combined the Jets and the Giants roster, is there a playoff team there?
Who's the quarterback?
Exactly. I feel like the answer is no.
It's still the same. It's the same issue.
Right.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think both of those franchises are sitting there going, like, what are we supposed to do? And by the way, I'm from the Northeast. I grew up in New Jersey. I'm that weird combination of Knicks and Giants. Like, as a Giants fan, I don't even know what to make of it, because to take it a step further, we're hearing that Dayball and Shane don't have a long leash. Well, what are you doing in the draft? You're taking a rookie quarterback. Now, maybe you strike gold, right? Like, maybe you get the Bo Nix who gets your team to the postseason. Maybe you get Jaden Daniels who, is the second coming of, insert whatever name, Lamar Jackson or whoever else. Like, that path for rookie quarterbacks, and I know, not to point to outliers here, because we had 2 of them make the postseason and one of them still alive in the Commanders with Daniels. But generally, rookie quarterbacks don't have a ton of success, right, immediately. And if you're saying they don't have a long leash, then you're having 2 guys, one in the front office, one on the sideline, make a decision on who that next quarterback is going to be with an expectation that they have to win this year. And I don't know if you're setting them up for failure when you position it that way. This is either long-term rebuild or like we got to figure this out right now. And if it's figure it out right now, then what I would argue, don't go and draft a quarterback. If you're the Giants, for example, go get Justin Fields and continue to either trade down and figure out some of these other holes on your roster that need to be filled.
There are teams still playing, so we'll save the rest of the offseason stuff for another time. And here's where I want to move over to, because you have a front row seat. Excuse me. I'm watching that game last night, and knowing what I know about arena management, knowing what I know about operation, the game itself is obviously the biggest story. But I'm sitting there like, how did they pull this off? And, I'm not from Los Angeles. I commuted there for a year for work. If you're in this business longer than a few years, chances are you have friends in LA, and I do. And I'm grateful that they're all good and, they all appear to be safe. And I'm lucky that none of my friends have been adversely affected. But how did they pull this off? The NFL family coming together to pull off this event. And I wonder how you guys have digested what a horrific, apocalyptic scene it is in Southern California.
Yeah, it's wild. Like today is one of the clearer days that we've had. And, Tuesday when those fires broke out, I was finishing up a show at NFL Network and I get into the car and I'm on the highway and I look up, I'm like, man, it looks like there's an explosion out in the distance with all that smoke. And you don't think anything of it because, you could see it, but it's not something that you think is going to turn into what it ended up turning into. And as the day unfolded, you say, oh, boy, like this is bad. And then obviously it got worse. It's multiple fires. The air quality is really bad. And then, you start thinking logistically because, clearly like we're still working, right? Like there's games to cover. We're still doing pregame shows. Still got to be in studio. I had pre and post on Monday night. And then the news came out that they were going to move that game. I thought during the game broadcast, ESPN did a really good job. Bidwell, who's the team owner, Michael Bidwell, who's the team owner of the Cardinals, sending two of the Arizona Cardinals planes to Los Angeles because it wasn't just the team for the Rams perspective that got down there. It was multiple pets. It was families, whether it was spouses and children. Like there were multiple planes that brought everyone down for a few days. And then even just from like a concession standpoint, I think you hit the nail on the head. You don't even think about this stuff. You take for granted. It was, I think 52,000 tickets that were sold in a matter of hours. It was $60,000 concessions for, 60,000 plus people, in a very short period of time. Like think about sourcing all of that stuff very quickly. You're right. The short answer is I have no idea. People way smarter than me are the ones that were able to logistically plan in a very short period of time for that. But game went off without a hitch. And for as much of a lopsided affair as it was, there was actually some really good storylines. I mean, the fact that we saw 9 sacks in that game, and then they were questioning, hey, what happens to Sam Darnold? Hey, the Rams, who, lost 4 of their 5 games to start the season, now all of a sudden have looked like a dangerous team. I would tell you it was because they were decimated by injuries earlier this year. And if they were healthy the entire season, maybe we are talking about a team that would have pushed, the Lions or the Vikings for that number 1 seed. Like this is pretty remarkable what we've seen from this Rams squad. But I think even logistically speaking, you hit the nail on the head.
So over to the actual game, and look, I'm not one that does the whole hey, top 5 coaches in the NFL coming up next. And ultimately, I don't know if Sean McVay is the best coach in pro football, but I don't know how many names you'd put ahead of him. Sure. Since he went to L.A., they have the second most playoff wins, of course, to the Chiefs. And Andy, certainly, BYU legend, is somebody who would be on anybody's list of not just the greatest now, but the greatest of all time. But what I love about McVay is it just he's one of the few coaches, I mean this, one of the few coaches in pro football where it's like, all right, we're going to throw it tonight to win. Okay, we'll run it tonight to win. Okay, we're going to rely on a defense that's littered with rookies to just push you around. Whatever the game needs, and they don't win all of their games, but I thought last night, the way that script played out with the way that Sean put that game plan together, I was wildly impressed.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's what's maybe the most impressive thing about this team. We did the post-game show last night, and I was working with Steve Weich and David Carr, and I turned to them and I said, look, we work out a place and we cover a sport where, generally speaking, we talk about the quarterbacks and the offensive players. And of course, David smiles ear to ear because he knows that he played that position and I'm hitting the nail on the head, and he knows I'm right about it. But yet, to me, the biggest storyline in that game was that team's defense. And I think you're right. Like, statistically speaking, you'll look at what Stafford did. I think he threw for 209, if I'm not mistaken, and the 2 touchdowns. But I don't know if anyone would have watched that game and said, outside of like the opening drive, and he was surgical in that first half. But I think McVay in his press conference put it really well, which is, hey, there are things that Matthew was doing that showed ultimate command of the game that might not show up in the stat sheet. And, I got to talk to David about that off air, and he agreed with that assessment. But I think, to your point, you're talking about, a bunch of rookies with Aaron Donald in the building, not playing, and yet they're generating 9 sacks. And the rookie class, really the last 2 years, what they've done in the draft with some of these draft picks is really impressive. And we're talking about a young unit. I think, in my mind, and I don't know what happens with Stafford, for example, like, in the offseason, I know there were problems with his contract this year, but I will tell you, like, the identity of that team in 2 years is going to be their defense. I think you make an argument the identity of that team even next season is going to be their defense, because I think there's questions around Stafford, there's questions around Cooper Kupp. There is this morphing that you're seeing between defense and Kyron Williams on the offensive side. They're starting to look like an old school football team. And candidly, I think a lot of teams that are still alive look like what football used to be when you and I were watching as kids, where it's defense, run the football, the devaluation of the running back spot that we've heard about. Tell me which team right now isn't relying on their running back to really have
for
a
sure,
like,
for sure,
right? Like, it's just studs, and these free agents that have moved. Like, these are the biggest pieces on the chessboard right now. And I know there's pushback on Kansas City but like, Mahomes is the outlier in this whole thing. All of these teams and what they're doing in their backfields, to me, is just really impressive in carrying their squads.
Let me move over here a couple minutes. I don't want to keep you for too long because, me, I'll interview you for 45 minutes if you got nothing to do. But, you and I both watched Jaden Daniels play Pac-12 football. And it was kind of like, yeah, man, like, he's dynamic. He's got a lot to like. But I don't if anybody saw this when he was at ASU, like, okay, yeah, but please show me the receipts, because my point is, this is one of the coolest stories. Certainly what he's done first year for a Commanders team that has been suffering with that position for a number of years. Are you surprised to see a young man that we all watched at ASU be the story of pro football?
I'm so glad you brought this up. I actually just started 3 weeks ago, and I don't know if you remember Lamar Hurd, who was calling a bunch of games for us on the basketball side of Pac-12 Network. He's now with the Blazers, but Pac-12 asked us to do a show together, so we're doing it on Pac-12 Insider, which is on their FAST channel. It's also a podcast. You can get it on YouTube. And, so we're talking hoops, we're talking some college football, some NFL, NBA. It's a pretty cool it's cool that they're letting us do this. And one of the things that I brought up to him yesterday when we recorded the show, we were at his first start at ASU. It was against Kent State. It was Pac-12 Networks. He's a true freshman, first true freshman to get the start in an opener at ASU. Herm Edwards made the call there. And, I think he had either 3 total touchdowns or 2 total touchdowns, but, he had a good game. And I said to Lamar, it's hard for me as we got closer to the draft, right? We saw LSU Heisman winning Jaden Daniels. And as I'm talking to my colleagues at NFL Network, they're asking how he was at ASU, and we're kind of, swapping notes and going back and forth. And I said, man, it is hard for me to get out of my head the kid who was super, super thin, clearly needed to throw on some weight. You saw some of the intangibles there, to a guy that goes and wins the Heisman, to now the guy that David Carr turned to me last night and he goes, hey, he's like the second coming of Lamar Jackson. That's what I see as the comp. And I couldn't believe he had said it. And then you start thinking about it in a moment. You go, yeah, I guess I kind of get it. So you're right. It's sometimes really difficult to separate those types of things, and what your initial impression is. What's that old commercial? Like, you only get one chance to make a first impression. I don't know if it was on a commercial.
Is that Head and Shoulders?
Yeah, I think it was one of those. Okay. Good call. Thank you for saving me on that. And but I think it's accurate. Like, I think I was falling into the trap a little bit of like ASU Jaden Daniels, who by the way was good, but I don't know if a few years ago I would have said the kid I saw against Kent State when we were doing our pregame show on Pac-12 Network was the dude that would be the second overall pick in the NFL draft and be the offensive rookie of the year. I mean, and that's where it's trending right now.
Last thing, Mike, then I'll set you loose. Appreciate your time as always. Texting with some buddies last night about who we think is going to win the Super Bowl, and I said, well, if I was putting money on it, I'd bet 15 in Kansas City and Andy Reid. I just would. I still think they're going to figure it out in the playoffs. They always do. Part of me feels like it's Josh's time. Part of me feels like it's Buffalo's time, though. So we'll just ask you this question. You can give us your thoughts. I'll set you loose. Do you feel like it's Kansas City? If not, who can get in their way?
I actually think it's the Ravens.
Okay.
To me, it's Baltimore. I think Baltimore's the best team in the field right now. And I know Kansas City fans, thank God I'm not on a radio station in Kansas City because I don't know if I'd say it like that. But to me, tell me the team that looks more dominant. Tell me the team that looks more balanced than they do. And it scares you. Like Mahomes is going to scare everyone, right? And their defense is creating turnovers again. I haven't seen Mahomes throw a touchdown since Christmas. It's been a hot minute, and that's probably a good thing for that team considering how banged up they were. But Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson scared the bejesus out of me. They figured out their defensive issues from the first half of the season. They are dominating football teams. Like not to say I don't think it's close. I think Buffalo's a really good team, but like this matchup to me could have been the AFC Championship, game, and I would have been thrilled about it. I can't wait to see how this thing plays out, but Baltimore scares me the most. And the one issue that they had in that championship game against Kansas City last year was an inability to control the clock and run the football. 2 design runs for Lamar Jackson in that loss. Todd Monken, I think, learned his lesson. That doesn't happen again. Now, they won't be hosting that game, but the Derrick Henry factor alone puts them in a really good position, and I think the world of that team. They are the scariest team that's still alive, in my opinion.
Be happy for Lamar to get that done. So wouldn't hate that at all. Mike, appreciate the time, man. It's always been a great start to the postseason. Look forward to seeing how it plays out, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Always appreciate you having me on.
The great Mike Yam, formerly of the Pac-12 Network, now with the NFL Network. He has written a children's book called Fried Rice and Marinara. You can get him on Twitter for the links to that book and also all of his work. At Mike_Yam is where you find him. Brought to you today by my good friends at Prize Picks, which is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. It's very easy. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. You can run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. So join now. No, we're not doing that one. All right. You can prepare for the holidays at some point. But here's the deal with Prize Picks. It's very, very easy. We'll use last night's Rams-Vikings game just as a loose example. On Prize Picks, you would have been asked to pick like T.J. Hawkinson more than 65.5 receiving yards or Kyron Williams more than 85.5 rushing yards. It's very easy. You don't have to worry about the spread or over-under or money lines or any of that stuff. So here's the deal. They're giving away free money. You can download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. Morgan Scalley, Jason Beck addressed the media earlier. Going to get some of that sound coming up. On the other side, we still have Tim McMahon and Dave Fox to join the show on a Tuesday, so we're busy. Keep it here on ESPN 700. We got Tim McMahon on the show today. Covers the NBA for ESPN, covers the Jazz. Has not covered the Jazz as much this year as he has in years past when the Jazz were serious about winning, but hopefully that will change. Cooper Flagg plays tonight. You got a little Duke Miami college basketball. If you've not seen this young man play, watch him, then maybe you'll understand exactly what the Jazz are doing, and hopefully Lady Luck actually shines on the Jazz for the first time. Not 9 lottery trips for the Jazz, 0 situations where they moved up. We're due, okay? So we'll bring in Tim today. We've got Dave Fox on the program. But it's rare that we get some sound from Utah football in the dead of winter. And with all the questions about transfers and NIL and what could be next and 12 personnel, 13 personnel. I mean, if you guys know the show, we're a fan of tight ends. Several good little tidbits were dropped. So we played Coach Witt earlier, kind of off the top. If you missed that, go to the website. So here, this segment, you're going to hear from Morgan Scalley and the new offensive coordinator, Jason Beck.
And I think we did a really good job of evaluating needs in both the portal. Also got a JC transfer in Jeremiah Caldwell. Love the addition of length. It's such a huge benefit in this defense, as much man coverage as we play. So Blake Cotton, Donovan Saunders, and Jeremiah Caldwell, all 6'2 plus. So really excited for this group. I loved the progress of Scooby Davis throughout last season. Smith Stone's a guy that you're probably going to see outside this year as well. He's a guy that should not leave the field, as good as he is. And so I just look at the guys that we have returning. Sammy Hunter, Jason Stokes is a freshman that came in. Dion Mays is a guy that we love. So, this happens every year. Oh, you lost this guy, you lost that guy. How are you going to? And every year, I think we've proven that we can do a pretty good job of reloading.
Morgan, I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about Keanu's exit. How hard is it to see a guy like that go, that you've developed behind the scenes, built a relationship with, and what do you think of your defensive tackle depth now that he's gone?
Well, I love every player that comes into this program, that sacrifices and gives and buys into this culture. You love them, and when they leave this program, you hope they go on to be the men that you've taught them to be. And at the same time, my job is to develop the guys that we have in this program, and I do a disservice to them by spending much time on guys that aren't a part of our team anymore. I love our defensive tackles. You look at Dallas Vakalahi, he's a true freshman, and what he did. Very active, very productive. Aliki Vimahi's going to be back, which is a huge plus. He provides leadership and some senior leadership at that. Jonalea Ea is a guy that we've been fighting to put on the weight. And man, he's finally got there. So this is one of the most athletic defensive linemen that we have, and really excited for his length and athleticism to show up with the added weight. And then all the freshmen that are coming in, we're excited about all of them. Usually if you're going to play as a freshman, physically you have to be ready, mentally you have to be ready. Two things that keep people from playing as true freshmen really is are they physically ready and mentally capable, and that's our job, is to coach them up. But all of those freshmen, every single one of them coming to this program, you're not going to have to spend a whole lot of time putting weight on. So we're fired up.
Coach, I'd be curious. You already kind of talked about Smith Snowden, but Smith and Teo specifically and Scooby too. What is the next step in their sort of progression?
I would say become compelling. Bring others along with you. The great ones that we've had, the Devin Lloyds, the Clark Phillips, the Cole Bishops, Joni Va, they brought others with them. They weren't just focused on their development. They were bringing other guys with them. Come in the room. Let's go. Let's work our steps. Let's watch film together. So I think leadership is going to be the next step for those guys, and they've already done it, some of that. But you get as many new faces as we have. You have to have leadership, and those leaders gotta be compelling.
Yeah, you had a little bit of injury attrition with the linebacker room this past season. With them kind of getting back to full strength, what do you expect from them in terms of performance, taking a step forward?
Yeah, having Levani back is huge. I think his biggest concern was making sure that he got his jersey number back, number 3. And so John O'Hall have to give that one up, but love the progression of Jonathan Hall, moving him to linebacker. He's going to be a star in this league. Lander continued to work through his rehab as the season went on. He's going to be 100%. So you lose a guy like Karene, again, you're going to lose seniors, you're going to lose guys to transfers, but that's our job as coaches is to coach them up. It's to develop and teach, and you've got one of the best teachers here at the University of Utah, Colton Swan. He's done a great job with those guys. Love the depth that we have at linebacker, the influx of athletic freshmen. We could spend all day talking about the new faces, but I'm zero issues with the linebacker depth.
Coach, we've talked a lot about the Big 12. What did you learn about the offenses in the Big 12, and how do you better defend them next season?
There wasn't much difference between the Pac-12 to the Big 12. I'd say the biggest difference it was probably at the quarterback level. Now that was, maybe an anomaly, but last year you faced 3 first-round draft picks all starting in the NFL right now. So they've got good quarterbacks in the Big 12, but when you go up against Penix and Nix and Caleb Williams in 1 year, that's a huge deal. So very physical offenses, good coaches. That's what you would expect in a Power 4 conference, and that's what we have.
Morgan, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about NIL. Obviously, with revenue sharing, it's changed the model. You're a big relationships and culture guy. I'm curious, as the defensive coordinator, how do you feel like you've had to adjust or adapt to the new model in terms of still having that culture, but also adapting to the pay-for-play model that is college football now?
I just think that, players in the past have left your program because they felt like they wanted a new opportunity to play. Now it's for different reasons outside of that. My job is continue to maintain and strengthen the culture that we have. I truly believe that culture does matter, and for those that it doesn't matter to, that's okay, and we're going to get the right guys in this program. We have very good support. We have very good NIL, and another thing is people want to donate money to good people, good programs. We've got a very good program. Kyle Whittingham has done nothing but establish class and doing it the right way. And so that's why, in my opinion, we should not have an issue raising money.
Morgan, I think you had 1 year overlap with Jason Beck when you guys were both playing. We're just curious about your relationship with him, and what do you think he's going to bring to this offense that you're going to have to practice against every day?
I remember nothing about it. All I know is that, I'm always watching offense, and as a part of the off season, I watched a ton of his offense, and I love it. It creates problems for defensive coordinators for a multitude of reasons. The formations into the boundary, the shifts in motions, the QB run game, a lot of these things, changing personnel groups as you go throughout a series, all that, causes defensive coordinators to really have to put in the work. And so I'm so fired up for this offense, for the quarterback coming in, Devin, and the QB depth that we have. So it's going to be interesting this spring going up against a new offense, because I love Andy and what he brought and his offensive scheme, but excited for this change.
For a couple more.
Easier to recruit in Texas now that you're in the Big 12?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Morgan, I'm curious about what you need to see from Rabbit this offseason as he continues to develop into the safeties room.
Well, the number one thing was developing his body, and he's done that. I mean, usually you can tell how much it matters to a player based on what they do in their downtime. He came back bigger, stronger on his own. So he's already looking very explosive. His knowledge of the defense is only going to get better. He's going to be elite, in my opinion. So, good question. Okay.
That was Utah defensive coordinator and head coach in waiting, Morgan Scalley. Now, for the first time on the station, you'll hear from the newest Utah offensive coordinator. Here's one Jason Beck.
Pleased to be joined by our offensive coordinator, Jason Beck. When we're ready, we'll start in with questions.
All right, who's up?
Jason, I'm curious, just walk me through the process of deciding to come to Utah and what you think you can do with this program now that you're here.
Yeah, just, when I hit that time of year and had some opportunities come up, and Coach Witt came calling, and know the program well, looking at it from the outside and following it over all this time. And man, what a great opportunity to be a part of such a great program. The success they've had over a long period of time, playing and winning conference championships. It was just a no-brainer for me to be able to join such a great program and to be a part of it.
How would you describe your offense to Utah fans that haven't seen a lot of it? The offense is just kind of based around playing to your personnel, to your players. So it's all about identifying your best players and putting them in positions to have success and to play well. A lot of times that's driven through the quarterback. It starts with him. It starts with the O-line, with what they can do, and then it goes to the other skill people around them. But it's QB-centered and play to your personnel.
How do your schemes and your philosophy on offense kind of fit with the culture and philosophy here at Utah? I mean, how do they kind of work together, just from your early perspective?
Yeah, I do. We start with the who, like I mentioned, who the guys are, and then it's all about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so the execution is the what. But with the culture, it's all about how, the competitiveness, the spirit, the heart, the fight. And so, man, we coach that out of our guys just as much as we do the execution side of things, because we want those, every play, it's, do I get the job done against the guy I'm going against at the highest level? So that competitive spirit, which I've appreciated about this program over all these years, it's evident. Tough guys, playing physical, playing hard. That's what it's all about.
Coach, to kind of piggyback off of that, how beneficial is it for you to have the quarterback that played under you last season follow you to Utah?
Yeah, that was very positive, just in terms of he knows we'll tweak some things and adapt some things, but yeah, he's already up and running, so he's been in it for a year. And so just his example to help the other guys or to show what it's supposed to look like at a high level for the other guys to come around, and how that permeates throughout, the offensive guys is a big positive, as well as I know him. The other quarterbacks here, I'm going to really need to get to know them and what their strengths are and how to help them, where with Dev, I have that history of knowing him at a really high level, so you're already starting from that point. You're starting from a year in with a person, which is a huge advantage with that.
Jason, continuing on that line of questioning, what was the conversation like with Devin as soon as you got this job? Was it didn't take much convincing? Does he want to continue to play in this type of offense? And also, there's been a history of injuries with quarterbacks here, obviously. He's a big runner. Do you want to continue that aggressiveness when he has the ability to take off?
So starting with the first part, it was not guaranteed. I knew him and his family appreciated what we did and how we used them and that relationship. But with this world of you hit the portal and, we were talking about NIL earlier and all those variables, yeah, you never know what could happen or would happen. And so it was obviously great that it worked out the way it did, and you feel good about that, but nothing's guaranteed till it happens. So that was great. Along that thing of playing to guys' skill sets, Devin does have that skill set as a runner, but you do need to manage that depending on the bye weeks and rest. That you can't overuse, but at the same time, when you need to do certain things, critical points in game, critical situations, you got to go to what's going to be the best for you. And so there is an art to managing that and being smart about it. And on the flip side, I've had as many guys get hurt just doing normal stuff, standing in the pocket throwing it as I have running it. And he has a really good ability to protect himself. So he's not taking direct shots and those kind of things. And a lot of times guys who have that skill set, they are that way. As a runner, they can protect themselves at a pretty high level. It's more the other times that the injuries come up, the unexpected type of thing. So, but yeah, you gotta manage that.
We were seeing 2 and 3 tight ends at a time deployed in Utah's offense over the last few years. How do you plan on using the tight ends, given who's on the roster now and how you like to play?
Yeah, it's if it's a strength, the tight end play, then man, we'll play with 2 tight ends. If it's so, it really is just that. I kind of use that phrase, earn not given. Those guys earn the right for their role and what that looks like. And some years we've done a lot of 12, and we've even done this past year, we did a lot of 2 tight ends, 3 wideouts because of Devin's ability as the runner, because that was the guys you trusted, the circle of trust. 2 of those tight end guys were in there, and so we had them on the field quite a bit. Other years, it's been a lot more 11 personnel because of that. My first year at Syracuse, 10 personnel was our top thing because that was the strength of the thing. So it really is the who and identifying the who and who's in that circle of trust and then creating it around them with what they do.
Looking at his numbers from New Mexico, 58% if you round up completion, 12 touchdown passes, 12 picks. Do you think those numbers need to improve in the Big 12?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And with a young guy, they should, as he continues to grow and improve, they should improve, absolutely.
Kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit, you obviously have a year with Devin. You guys know each other very well. Coming here to Utah, how would you like to see both of you guys kind of improve and elevate your games?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain, reads and certain throws that we'll look to complete and do at a higher level. But you are, now you're mixing in all these other skill guys and getting them on the same page with all that chemistry. So it's just a matter of that process, continue to grow, continue to improve, identify the guys here, the strengths here to play to, and kind of making that all come together, both for Dev, but for the whole room. It's about developing and improving every guy in the QB room as the QB coach and on the offense, as the offensive coordinator.
Jason, as Kyle mentioned, Dorian Singer's looking for an opportunity to potentially have a 5th year of eligibility. Obviously, he has a really close relationship with Devin Dampier. I'm curious, what do you think he could bring to your offense if he is able to get that 5th year of eligibility and just having that relationship with Devin?
Yeah, man, he's a proven player in this league, and he's done it. So to have that back would be great if it worked out. And then, yeah, I'm assuming they got some pretty good chemistry from time together. So you're kind of, if that were to work out, you're building on all that chemistry that they've developed over time. So, yeah, a lot of positives with those things.
Coach, you joined the program at kind of a unique time as the transfer portal opened and Utah kind of going through a makeover on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, you were involved with that. Just kind of walk us through that process of rebuilding and remaking this offensive unit and kind of how you see it.
Yeah, it's the portal's a funny thing, and that guys are just jumping in there constantly. I can't remember what the final numbers were, but a couple thousand. And so as guys hit the portal, and you're evaluating for the spots you have and the openings you have to fill, we believe in you obviously watch the film, you evaluate, but it's also about getting references from people and trust that have connections to these players, because you want to bring in to have a really strong culture is you want to bring in guys that fit that culture. And so being able to make decisions based off who's a great fit and potentially avoiding guys who could be really good players but not a great fit, that's every bit as important as just the talent that shows up on tape. And the best way for that is through references, people that know them, that can kind of give you some info on them to make those decisions.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks guys.
Jason.
All right, there you
Thanks
go.
all.
If you are unfamiliar with Jason Beck, if that's the first time you've heard him speak, I would imagine you walk away rather impressed. Coach Witt, Coach Scally, Coach Beck, all addressing the market today. If you missed any of the sound, we played all of it for you now. But if you missed it, if you want to hear Kyle, go to ESPN700sports.com. It's where you can find a bevy of Ute sound at all times, actually. All right, time now to enter to win tickets for the Red Hot Utah men's basketball team coming off a win against OK State, first Big 12 win. Text Utes to 33986 to enter for Utah men's basketball tickets. That's Utes to 33986 to enter for Utah men's basketball tickets. We got 2 hours down. We got about 2 hours to go. We'll bring in Tim McMahon coming up for a little hoop. Dave Fox is live in studio. Then we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the show. We'll say goodnight in time for Utah women's hoops against Baylor. It's a big one tonight. You can hear it right here on ESPN 700. He is Ban McMahon. He is Tim McMahon. He covers the NBA for ESPN and joins us on a weekly basis and joins us on a Tuesday afternoon. Tim McMahon, happy Tuesday, sir. How you doing?
Howdy, partner. How are you?
We're good. We're good. We're good. So, we had your buddy Bobby Marks on yesterday to talk a little Jazz basketball and, kind of kicked around some of the same topics you and I have discussed. There really isn't a whole lot new. But here's what's been kind of interesting as of late, Tim. I've been wondering how they're going to get these young players good experience in like pressure-packed situations because there'll be no playoffs here, probably not for a while, but we understand what they're doing to try to long game it. But lately, they've been really competitive and oftentimes against good teams and even have been able to come away with some wins. So is that, it is the only way that they can get these young players experience, but what sort of positive benefit could Isaiah Collier get from playing an overtime game? I know it's the Nets, but again, no playoff basketball. You got to get these young players some experience in intense NBA games. In the past few weeks, I feel like that's how they've been playing.
Well, I think one benefit that he got out of that is he learned that the NBA rule is 8 seconds before you can cross the half-court line. Sir, oh, man, what a wild swing for that to happen in the regulation. Then the guy hits the game winner. I mean, listen, we all understand, like, big picture-wise, you wouldn't call these pressure situations. But for a guy who's trying to get his feet under him, trying to establish himself as an NBA player, it's Isaiah Collier's not out there trying to tank a game. He's trying to prove that he can play in this league. He's trying to prove that he can win. And, there are obviously learning situations, sometimes through mistakes, and then sometimes through being able to come through in those type of situations. And, I think there is some benefit there. Now, look, if you put some people on polygraphs, did people who wear suits around that place really want to win that game? Obviously not. But, you have to give Isaiah Collier credit. Like, he's going to go out there, he's going to play hard, and he made it play down the stretch there to pull that one out.
I know that Will Hardy is part of the brain trust, and I know that he's part of the future. I mean, it's very rare that you have a coach that has 2 option years already picked up. But what do you think his response is when he gets the text like, hey, here's who's playing tonight? He's like, wait, what? Like, to your point, they sat like half the team against the Nets, and it is the Nets. But when you're starting, front court is Drew Eubanks, Cody Williams, and Micah Potter as a head coach, you have to be going like, what am I supposed to do here?
Listen, I would just say that
absolutely.
But how did he get 50
season with a very firm understanding?
Network. He has written a children's book.
The franchise.
It's very
what the bigger picture was.
Going to get some of that sound coming.
It's his job to do the best possible job he can coaching whatever players he has available on a night-to-night basis. And, part of that is trying to develop these young players. And so I'm sure he looks at that and he says, okay, the focus tonight is going to be developmental opportunities for these guys. And Will had to understand going into the season, like, hey, his coaching record is not going to be pretty once the summer rolls around. That's just the way it is. But, he wants a chance to be able to compete at a high level. And it's not like you just get to snap your fingers. This is a team that needs to go through, frankly, some real ugliness to have a chance to get the kind of talent that you need to be able to compete like that.
Since it is topical, and look, I feel like I'm pretty good at this job, but I cannot spin any dark magic to get 15 minutes out of the Jazz right now, Tim. But I will ask you one more question here because it is topical. And, like Isaiah has lead guard instincts that Keontae doesn't. He might have lead guard instincts that nobody else on the roster does outside of Patty Mills, who's like our age, so we can put him aside. But are you closer and closer to kind of understanding what Isaiah Collier, he was highly recruited out of high school, had a really rough year with SC, and when you kind of learn the difficulties of that season, Bronny James on the team and a coach kind of a dead man walking, it's hard to judge him too harshly. But they liked him a lot in the pre-draft process, and were, according to reports, they were thrilled that he was there, but every front office is thrilled that the guy they drafted was there. I get the deal. But are you seeing anything from him specifically with his, Isaiah's kind of lead guard tendencies and just habits that maybe other players don't have on the roster to indicate that maybe this is a guy that could be around for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all these guys who are on their rookie deals could be around for a minute. They won't all make it, but, the Jazz bring them in with their minds open to, to them proving themselves. And I think the thing that stands out the most about Collier is just like he's obviously an NBA athlete, right? Like, forget about instincts and all that. Like, this guy is a strong, physical, athletic dude. And, you start with that as far as giving him a chance and then, see how things go from there. But like the idea of what can Isaiah Collier become, a lead guard who's a really tough physical defender, that's not a bad place to start. We'll see what ends up happening there, but he's definitely got a chance.
All right, we can move off the Jazz, Tim. But I will ask you this, because when we had you on last week, it was prior to that Cavs OKC game, who kind of discussed the dynamic of it and, how sometimes the NBA scheduling gods shine upon us. And we do get like a midseason game that maybe indicates one thing or the other. And, back to the whole dynamic of players getting experience, as you know, because you were in town and you were around. Year 2, Donovan Mitchell, good Jazz team. Rudy pops. Ingles turns into a good player. Dennis brings in Rubio. And they beat OKC. Donovan gets the experience of a lead scoring option for a playoff team. And I can remember covering that team and saying, this is great news. Donovan getting this experience year 2 is going to pay off year 5, 6, and 7. And it is, but it's not here. Now, he didn't have a great shooting game that night, but what were your takeaways as far as that massive midseason matchup that you think maybe manifested itself as it pertains to something that's actually real, even though it's a regular season game?
Well, yeah, and we're going to get a rematch. I'll actually be in OKC Thursday night to see those teams play again.
Nice.
And I think the first thing that obviously stands out is the Cavaliers put 129 points up with Donovan having a rough shooting night against a team that is like far and away the best defensive team in the league. And, Evan Mobley in particular was phenomenal offensively, scoring, driving, short roll, passing. Like, he did a little bit of rebounding. He did a little bit of everything. And, I've talked to Donovan recently. They came through Dallas. I've talked to other people at the Cavs. And when you talk about what's the biggest difference in the Cavaliers team, it's Evan Mobley's evolution. And obviously, they draft that guy with the 3rd overall pick thinking he had star type of potential. And you're certainly seeing it. You've seen flashes of it before. He's been consistently great on the defensive end, but he's really morphing into a big time weapon offensively. And I was among many people who did not think that Allen and Mobley could be a fit on a real contending type of team. And they've made us eat our words, because clearly that dynamic is working. The Cavaliers are the number 1 offense in the NBA. And the other thing I would say, again, Donovan had a bad shooting night that night. I think we understand Donovan is a guy who really looked at his scoring numbers for a lot of his career, right? We can agree on that.
For sure.
And he has gotten off of that. His individual numbers are down, and it is including minutes. The team success is up. And it's because of the development of the guys around him, but also him willing to be, he's the leader there, but he doesn't have to be the man. Everything doesn't have to revolve around him. And they are the best passing team arguably in the NBA right now. And that doesn't happen if the ball's sticking with your star.
So I was, I'll ask you the question I asked Bobby yesterday, and I was a little surprised by his answer, and maybe we shouldn't be surprised because they're 33-5. Like, like at some point you're like, yeah, that's real. But I said, hey, do you think at this point Boston has company? And he said, yeah, I do. Now, that's not a guarantee that they're winning 4 and 7, but are you with Bobby Marks that if you're the Celtics and you're Joe Mazzulla, the Cavs are keeping you up a little bit at night now?
Listen, I'm not sitting here predicting that the Cavaliers come out of the Eastern Conference, but I am absolutely saying that it's possible. I mean, you don't get to the midway point of the season on a 70-win pace and have it be some sort of a fluke or phony. or any of that. And again, the fact that they are the best offense team in the NBA right now, that's going to give them a chance because they've got two guys who are big-time defensive anchors. They've got, I think, with Mobley's development now, they've got three guys who can kind of be that late shot clock, go get a bucket, type of option. Obviously, Donovan and Darius Garland are the first two. Look, I think that those teams run into each other in these two conference finals, and I think it's going to be one hell of a series.
All right, one more Eastern Conference question, then we'll come back this way. And I don't watch every Knick game, but I watch the ones that I can. So do you feel like there's just simply a Cleveland-Boston tier and then a big gap, and Orlando's starting to get healthy? Maybe they have something to say about it. What are you willing to say about New York's chances come spring?
I think it's a noticeable gap. I wouldn't just completely rule out the Knicks. My concerns are that the Knicks are going to run out of gas and/or bodies again during the playoffs. Man, those guys play a lot of minutes. Tibbs doesn't have much of a bench, but then if you to go out and make some moves to add to the bench, will they play those guys anyways? I'm not sure about that. But listen, man, Karl-Anthony Towns has been everything that you possibly could have hoped if you're the Knicks trading for him. He's having probably the best season of his career. He's certainly going to be an all-star and have an all-NBA type of case if he keeps this up. Hopefully the little thumb injury he suffered last night's not anything significant. They've got really nice role players around him, and Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, who broke out of his early season funk. And then, Brunson has proven that he's one of the best lead guards in the league. So I'm not telling you the Knicks have no chance. I just think they are, third place by a pretty comfortable margin after those first two.
Jalen, the best player they've had since Ewing. I mean, the only other guy in the conversation is peak Melo, right? And that was just a year or two.
Yeah, I think Jalen probably has a right to that claim. I don't know. I have to go back. Was Melo a top 5 MVP finisher? I know he put up some numbers.
Yeah, he had, and Porter's reminded me, he had one incredibly elite year in New York, and I do think he was a top 5 MVP guy at one point.
Yeah, so, you can have that discussion. I think that as time goes by, it's going to be pretty clear that Brunson had a better career in New York than Melo did.
Yeah, 2000, let's see, that was 13, 28.7 boards. Jeez. Yeah, Melo had a couple of pretty beast scoring years in New York. But Jalen, yeah, to your point, I feel like he'll have more years. He's younger, obviously. All right, let's move over to this. Zion Williamson is kind of like the original, millennial YouTube high school basketball phenom, and we all watched him on YouTube with those dunks and became familiar with him. He was a celebrity before he went to college. Now that's commonplace, but Zion was one of the trailblazers. And then at Duke, when you were able to kind of see him more consistently, you're like, wait, it's not just dunks. This kid is really good, and he still is. And sometimes when he's healthy, you're reminded, I've always kind of talked about the West over the past few years as for, Jazz perspective, okay, with all the conversation about the Warriors and Steph and all that, and, LeBron in L.A., Dallas has Luka, and New Orleans has Zion, right? And I still feel like the talent is there. But at what point, and maybe we're there, are you going is this ever going to work consistently? Because now he's back and healthy, but he can't be on time for a plane.
Well, and you don't get suspended the first time you're late for a plane.
Well said.
Or the 10th, or the 20th, or probably even the 50th.
Mm-hmm.
And, I refer to him as first team all IAS. It's always something with him. And I don't think that's ever going to change as long as he's in New Orleans, and I'm not sure it'll change anywhere. But I certainly think he's going to need a fresh start to have any real chance to fulfill his potential. He's going to need to make some changes. I think from a physical standpoint, there's at least some encouraging signs. My understanding is he's as light and as lean as he's been since he's been in the NBA. But this thing with the Pelicans, honestly, it just feels like it's sort of this sad march where both sides really want to break up at this point. But you got to figure out the details of the divorce. And obviously, the Pelicans aren't just going to give him away. So he's got to restore his value in the best interest of himself and of the franchise, and showing up for the plane on time would be a pretty good place to start. Getting back on the floor was nice, but like, dude, you're back one game and then you get suspended? Come on, man.
Yeah, such a bad look. And Tim, the Pelicans have a higher payroll than the Clippers or the Cavs, and they're right behind the Warriors. They're number 12, and they have 8 wins. Like, what's the feel down there? Are they getting close to saying, okay, best laid plans, couldn't stay healthy, made some bad choices? Like, the talent's on the roster. Are they a potential fire sale candidate prior to the deadline?
Fire sale's too strong. There's no question they'll make at least one trade. There's a 0% chance that they're going to be a luxury tax team sitting at the bottom of the Western Conference. They would love to find any sort of value for Brandon Ingram at this point. I'm not sure that's going to be able to happen. You know, we'll see. The problem is he wants a max contract, and I don't believe anybody wants to give him one. So do you trade for a guy and give up anything of value if you don't think he's on your team next year? I don't know. But, like, they're not going to – for example, like, if you call them about Herb Jones, you're going to get hung up on. So, you know, to me, a fire sale is where you're just unloading everybody. And the hope there is you bottom out. The hope there is that they're next year's Memphis Grizzlies, right? You have just a terrible run of injury luck. You bottom out, and then you're able to have a bounce-back season next year with a lottery pick in tow. And obviously the great hope there is they get somebody in the lottery who can slide right in as the face of the franchise, because I'm not sure Zion's back next year.
So are you reporting that the Jazz and the Pelicans have mutual interest in a deal that lands Zion Williamson in Salt Lake?
You know what? I'm not reporting that.
Okay.
It's an interesting thought process. You guys have already named, like, what is it, like banks and mountains or whatever after them.
That's a good point. Hadn't even considered that.
Park? What's the other Zion?
There is. And look, once upon a time, as the story goes, Tim, on July 24th, we have a holiday called Pioneer Day. I don't want to get into the history of it, but Karl Malone's birthday is July 24th. And for like the first decade of his career, he's like, dude, they throw parades for me in Salt Lake. So maybe we can just simply tell Zion we've already named everything after him, and maybe he'll come play for the Jazz. Who knows?
Well, you know, I don't want to speculate too much because, you know, I'm not sure. I haven't discussed this with anybody in Utah, right? And you might get one of those, you know, like, hell no, we're not building around that guy. You know, we're not going to risk the culture of the franchise. But again, I'm just saying, if it's not the Jazz, there might be another team. It's like, when are we going to get another chance to take a swing on that type of talent? You know?
Sure.
I mean, whether it's the Blazers, the Wizards, like, I'm just saying that the talent is undeniable. The player is completely unreliable. So what do you do with that? I think it's an interesting discussion for some teams to have. Last thing, and I'll set you loose on this. You know, every time I dial in on Denver and have a chance to watch him play, it just they still have that dude. Still have that dude that I know they don't have the same record as OKC or Houston, and maybe there are other teams in Vegas that believe they have better chances to win the West than Denver. But the recent run of play where they've been a lot better, did they find a little something? And I'm not even going to ask you if they should be taken seriously because they have the best player in the world, but should Nuggets fans be a little bit more encouraged about the recent form down in Denver? I mean, they've got a chance to make some noise for sure as long as Joker's healthy. There's a few things here, and I've been around the Nuggets here in Dallas for a little baseball series and actually heading to game 2 of that here in a little bit here. So I've been around them a little bit over the last few days. And number one, Russell Westbrook, say what you want about the guy. His synergy with Joker has been phenomenal. They are 12-3 when they've got those two guys in the starting lineup together. I mean, Russ as a cutter has just been, I mean, it's just clicked with Joker, which obviously is the best passing big man that we've ever seen, maybe the best passer, period, in the league, and Russ has figured out how to play off of that. They've got Aaron Gordon back now. They're going to be patient ramping him up, so he's coming off the bench for a little bit. When he's ready to start, I'm not so sure that Russ won't stay in the starting lineup. It would probably be a Christian Brown coming off the bench at that point. But they've found something there. What they need to find is the Jamal Murray that they've had during their playoff runs, during their deep playoff runs, during their championship run. If they get that Jamal Murray come playoff time, they're going to have a chance. If they get mediocre Jamal Murray we've seen for most of the season, I have a hard time seeing them coming out of the Western Conference.
Tim, we have inspired a movement today on the program. It's such a good point that, well, I mean, there are so many things named Zion here that it just feels like such a natural move. So we're going to further the narrative. We will behave ourselves.
How do I think of these stupid things? And you live there, see it every day, and it's never crossed your mind.
Tim, you've been coming on the show for 5.5 years, man. You know the intellect behind the mic. I'm doing the best I can to get through every day, bro. That's all I can say.
That's fair.
All right, my friend.
That's fair.
Good chatting with you. We'll talk soon.
Hey, can I just say, in that Jazz purple, if Zion's not careful, he will look a lot like the Hamburglar.
Oh, wow.
Or was it Grimace? The Hamburglar was Buddy.
Grimace works. Wow, what a visual, Tim. Have a good night, brother.
See ya.
Oh, my gosh. You know what? This makes sense. And, yeah, I do not know why, as a resident of 25 years of the market, I just haven't been like, well, because the story, Porter, by the way, about Karl Malone believing that Pioneer Day, the parade, was for him and his birthday, that's a true story.
It's hilarious.
So somebody needs to get a hold of Zion and be like, dude, they named half their state after you. Why aren't you playing? And they started in New Orleans. Now they're in Salt Lake. What are we doing? Why haven't we come up with this? The Jazz need a trade for Zion Williamson. I am on board.
There's always been a synergy there. I've also thought as there's not much jazz music out here, but there are Pelicans. We could trade the mascots to.
The name makes no sense, but at this point,
I know,
50 years.
But they could get it back.
What do you mean?
New Orleans Jazz, let's be clear, sounds a lot better.
Yeah, but the Utah Pelicans, how about this? We'll give New Orleans the Jazz, but I don't want the name Pelicans.
I mean, I don't either, but it fits more accurately.
Well, we're about to have a hockey team called the freaking Yeti.
Shh.
Everybody knows, dude. Come on. All right, breaking news. The Jazz are interested in Zion Williamson, and they've named half the state after him. This is an excellent narrative that we need to further. We just need to be careful and not incriminate our guy, Tim.
Yeah, Tim is not reporting anything. We're just trying to force something. We're manifesting.
You know what? You don't know how badly I don't want you to use that term ever again. We'll keep most of the reasons why off air, but I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. You know, we're going to catch a break. Okay, but before we catch a break, time now to win some cash on a Tuesday afternoon. Text PROSPERITY to 508-777-1000. That's PROSPERITY to 508-777-1000 for a chance to win $1,000 in cash in this nationwide contest. Good luck from ESPN 700. Prosperity to 508-777-1000. Dave Fox live in studio. We'll do some football in the 5 o'clock hour right before we say goodnight in time for Utah women's basketball. Utah versus Baylor, number 23 team in the country. Utah is. So stay tuned. That's about 5:45 on a Tuesday right here on ESPN 700.
man sings a thumbs up.
There it is. Leaky Lee. You don't like Leaky Lee? Great.
No Leaky
I follow
Lee.
rivers. Good song.
Have you been to a Leaky Lee show?
No, I've tried to go to a couple, but it hasn't worked out.
For a man that seems to be such a big fan of EDM, you don't seem to
Well,
attend
that's
very
not
live
EDM.
events. Oh, what's Leaky Lee?
That's just more kind of a new age kind of thing.
New age kind of
Yeah.
thing. Is that a new like?
No, it's just like,
form
but
of
it's not.
music?
It's not EDM. EDM's heavy beat, dance music. Yeah, right.
Ecstasy.
That's not what Leaky Lee is.
Did you ever hook up with Porter's Ecstasy guy before one of your shows or no?
No. Hey, is that camera working? He
You
just
are on
pointed the-
YouTube.
He just pointed the camera at us.
You have been on YouTube on the show now for a number of months.
I like it.
Yeah, we don't necessarily.
Well, why did he have to turn the camera?
So it's on you.
Because I
You
don't remember
work
him
in
ever.
television.
I don't remember him ever coming in and turning the camera before. I
Well,
think
you
before
easily-
you haven't had me on camera.
You easily forget. We've had you on camera every time you've been in studio for like 3 months.
Well, good. I'm comfortable with that.
I know you are. You work in television.
You hated last night at the end of talking 5 questions with Spence when I pointed the camera at you and was doing my recording of the end of the show while actually ending the show on TV.
Well,
you didn't like that.
Well, I'm not. I'm currently down on influencers.
Oh yeah, well that's not an
Not a
influencer.
huge like fan.
I'm
of, like,
with you.
hey, let's send everything out on Instagram.
But
Let's
hey-
everything out on TikTok. It's exhausting.
Doesn't that all end? What is the date? Doesn't that end on the 19th when TikTok gets banned?
I did hear they're banning. I don't think it's going to hold. Too many people
You
are
don't
making
think?
money on
But
TikTok.
that's like a couple days away.
Yeah, the problem with like social media, as soon as people started figuring out a way to monetize it, like you run into lawsuit after some people make their livelihood on social. So if you ban it, you're going to run into lawsuit. I don't think it's going to stick. But anyway, yes.
Oh, we'll see.
If you live online and that's all you do for your life, you turn into a human algorithm and it's exhausting to deal with. So
I'm with you.
So you were putting me in the influencer space, videoing me on your Instagram feed while we were doing television.
But my whole point, really, when I do that kind of thing, and you're the same way, is just to promote what we're doing.
For
Like
sure.
That's what.
And
that's
it was
what we
funny.
do.
I mean, there was some comedic value.
Right. We don't get on there and start to, hey, you got to head over to Walmart and buy that 12-pack of Dr. Pepper Zero.
Ooh, that sounds good, though.
Is really good, I got to tell you.
All right, Dave. Random. I'm good. Dave Fox live in studio with a lovely looking vest.
Thanks. Got this out of Nordstrom, as you would expect.
So shout out, Kath. Tim McMahon hopped on the show last segment. And we've come to, well, I don't want to put Tim in a bad spot. The Jazz should trade for Zion Williamson. Okay? They're not going to. This is a sports talk radio fun topic for fodder. But here's the deal. Hear me out, okay?
Okay.
And then let's get your take. First of all, I'm on the NBA trade machine right now. And the framework of a deal that works is John Collins and Jordan Clarkson go to the Pelicans. Okay, those are the players you could send to make sure that you're following the rules of the salary cap when it comes to trades. Because Zion makes 36.7, John's at 26.5, Jordan's at 14.1. The numbers match. Now the Jazz would have to send 5 first-round picks. It would have to be a Gobert Mitchell type haul. So the Pelicans have the number 11 payroll in the NBA, and they've won 8 basketball games. They have a worse record than the Jazz, and they've got a ton of talent. And there's all this conversation like Zion's not going to figure it out there. He's late to flights. He can't stay healthy. And we've named much of our state after Zion Williamson. And you remember back in the day, David, that once upon a time, we have a holiday in the state of Utah called Pioneer Day.
Yeah, we do.
It's on July 24th, and there are parades. And you remember once upon a time a young basketball player named Karl Malone.
His birthday.
Whose birthday is on Pioneer Day. For a number of years, legitimately thought
Oh,
they
yeah.
were throwing the parade for him.
Yep.
So here's the deal. We let Zion know, hey, like half the state's named after you, dude. They're already ready for it. Pelicans, New Orleans, Jazz were there. Jazz send Collins, Clarkson, probably 4 or 5 first-round picks. Zion Williams, the Jazz man. And boom, I've made the Jazz relevant.
Wow.
again.
Okay. Great idea, except that he can never stay healthy. So what's the point? Now you're stuck
You're
with
such
another
a
big
wet
fat
blanket.
I'm sorry. You're a big fat salary, and you're stuck with it because you can't play. But that sounds like fun, and he does fit in certainly the name. But no, I don't like that. Can I nix that one?
So you don't like fun things?
I'm nixing that one.
So you don't like fun things?
Not that one.
So
I like plenty of fun things, just not that one.
Zion
That one scares me.
on the books this year, 36.7. Next year, 39.4, 26, 27, 42.1. 27, 28, 44, 8. Porter, let me bring you in on this because, look.
And in those 4 years, he'll play about 10 games.
You're not wrong about the health thing, Dave. But let me present this. This is a guaranteed way to get a generational talent as opposed to relying on lottery odds. Stranger things have happened. I'm not saying this is going to go down, Porter, but you're a Zion fan when he's healthy.
I mean, his talent's undeniable. When he's on the floor, he's really fun to watch, and he's a force that very few players can really stop. But as Dave mentioned, the health things are real. The consistency things are real. But if you're the Jazz and you're not necessarily trying to win the NBA title next year or the year after, there are worse flyers you could take. There are worse chances you could take.
You know, there's a side note to all this that might actually work. Okay, let's go ahead and do the deal because he's not going to play anyway. So they get John Collins off the books. So they get rid of Clarkson, and they still can tank to possibly get that number 1 draft pick.
And guess what?
And then you got Zion's waiting if he ever feels like being healthy.
Yeah. I mean, look.
So that might work.
This actually, as I'm talking this through, this is not as crazy as most people think. Zion Williamson is 24 years old. Okay, last year, he played in 70 games. Okay, so he stayed healthy last year. Now, year before, 29.
Right.
Year before that, 61. Rookie year, of course, 24. He's only been in the play-in tournament. But he's 24 years old. He's on the books for 4 years. And a front court of Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen, and Zion Williamson, David? I mean, come on. I've been looking for a way to make this team relevant for months in order to do the show, and I think we found one.
Well, go ahead and give it a whirl. Are the Jazz consulting you on this? Has Danny called you?
Let me check the phone.
Did you give him have you given him the thumbs up?
I do have a missed call.
Well, then that could be him. Just tell him, let's go ahead and green light that.
I'm texting Danny and Justin tonight. I'm like, dude, just make the Zion trade.
Yeah, and I'm sure New Orleans is all over getting rid of their generational guy for John Collins and Jordan Clark.
Dave, you're not paying attention, okay? When you have the 11th highest payroll in pro basketball and you have 8 wins, you are up a creek without a paddle.
But you're still going to have that.
They have to shed. I honestly think David Griffin, the guy who's running their front office, I think there's a chance he's looking around and he's going, we got to blow it up. We got to start over. Yeah. We're spending way too much money for a team that has 8 wins. And look, they have talent on this roster outside of Zion Williamson. You know, they've got Brandon Ingram. They have C.J. McCollum. They have DeJounte Murray. They have Trey Murphy. They have Herb Jones, who everybody loves. Like, as we approach the trade deadline, in order to kind of understand which teams are going to make movements, you have to look at payroll juxtaposed to results. Teams in the past who have had high payrolls but can't win games, they jettison players because it doesn't make sense business-wise. If you're not going to make the playoffs, you don't have that revenue. Like, sometimes you got to start over. I think New Orleans should, and I think Zion will fit in well here.
I don't know what to say. You're off your rocker.
This is radio black magic is what this is.
I like the idea of moving Collins and Clarkson, but beyond that, no. And then 5 draft picks on top of it?
If Donovan, 4 or 5. If Donovan and Rudy got 4 or 5, Zion's getting 4 or 5, man.
But everybody knows at the time that may have looked good. That wasn't a great deal, but it was great for the Jazz.
Okay, fine, Dave. Talk about the development.
Although none of those picks have even panned out yet.
What are your thoughts on Svi Mikhailuk and how he's coming along? Like, I'm trying to make the Jazz interesting, okay, and you're not playing along.
I'm with you on this, but I'm also more realistic than you, and this is never going to happen.
You're not realistic.
That's never going to happen.
All right.
The chances that Leaky Lee walks in this studio and sings "I Follow Rivers" in front of us is more likely than that trade.
Where is Leaky Lee from? You don't know.
I think she's from Great Britain.
Okay. Anyway, moving on because
there you go.
Well, you don't have fun. You don't do fun things.
I don't know what else to tell you about that, but I do. I like the idea of talking about Jazz potential trades when they come up, and I enjoy seeing that, the rumors. But that one's just so out there. I'm too much of a realist.
Leaky Lee.
I live.
Are you sure that this person?
Lykke.
Gotcha. Anyway, all right, moving on. We don't get a lot of Utah football sound in the dead of winter.
Are you sure? Are we done with the Zion thing?
Yeah, because you don't have fun. I mean, if you want to talk more Jazz, but you don't have fun, what do you want to talk about? Drew Eubanks.
I don't want to leave your Zion dream until we're ready.
No, let's talk about Drew Eubanks and how physical he is.
That will be on 5 questions next time.
And how many offensive boards Eubanks
When have I ever
tonight.
asked you that question?
Well, I'm just okay. What do you think is interesting about the Jazz
Right now, nothing.
That's why I'm trying to
Yeah.
dream big, David.
But that doesn't make it any more interesting.
I think Zion Williamson to the Jazz is
If it
very
were-
interesting.
But that's not real.
It could be.
I have Locke on Talking Jazz tonight. Let's see what he comes up that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll hear a lot about the John Collins, Keontae George pick and rolls on the left side of the court against San Antonio with 5 minutes left in the fourth.
That's actually not a topic tonight.
Because that's relevant. How's my guy Locke?
I haven't seen him forever because their schedule is just it hasn't lined up. So this is the first he did the opener. This is the first Talking Jazz he's been on since the opening week.
I genuinely wonder how he's doing. Like Bowler pops in the studio once a week.
Yeah.
This is the time of year where broadcasters, coaches, players, like these guys are all gassed because they've been on the road like crazy. I wonder how David's holding up.
Yeah, so I think he's doing fine. I know he's a big skier like I am, and I think he was up on the slopes today. But he's had to cut into a lot of that.
Yeah.
So snow's good.
Give me your thoughts on the ski patrol strike.
Oh, wow, what a mess up at Park City because they couldn't open very many lifts, and yet you still have a massive amount of people. So I understand. I don't ski at Park City because I'm an Icon Pass guy, and they're not on the Icon.
Mm-hmm.
And but the lines apparently were unbelievable.
You only ski at Deer Valley now.
No, I ski anyone locally that's on the Icon, which is Deer Valley, Alta, Snowbird, Snow Basin, Solitude.
When's the last time you skied Alta?
I'm going tomorrow.
Are you really?
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough mountain. What about Snowbird?
Sometimes I'll do both because they're connected on the Icon.
Yeah.
So I'll probably hit them both tomorrow.
Moguls?
I'm not a mogul guy because it just wears me out.
I want to see you in a half pipe.
I like to just get out and fly on a groomer.
Yeah, that's the way to do
like
it.
Like a nice
man.
steep groomer.
That's the way to do it if you want to take care of your knees and your Achilles.
And they've got some good ones at Alta, so
Yes,
I'm
they do.
excited about tomorrow.
All right, back to, well, I guess not back to, over to the Utah football sound that we got today. We just did 15 minutes on Zion Williamson of the Jazz. I'm very excited about this.
That's cool. Well, thanks for having me. I'll see you next time.
Indeed. So, Coach Witt, I suppose from the standpoint of topical news, we now have clarity on Cam Rising.
Sort of.
Well,
he's not on the roster.
That's clarity, David.
Yeah, but I'd like to know exactly what he is
Kyle
doing.
said he would let Cam let us know what he's going to do. My guess is he finds a lower tier school to get a couple $100,000 and go play quarterback for a year. And I don't begrudge him for that.
Yeah.
Put off going into the real world as long as you can. You could be Dave Fox and put it off until you're 65.
Sure.
It's amazing.
Absolutely.
But how should we look back on the Cameron Rising tenure now that it looks like it's over officially?
You know, the positive sides, you look back at 2 Pac-12 championships and 2 Rose Bowls. They both ended almost the same way with injury. That's the difficult side of it. What he brought to the team during those years was fantastic. The negative side is just the last 2 years were a train wreck. And it was tough, not only on Cam, I'm sure. It was tough on the fan base. It was tough on the other quarterbacks in the room. We learned that this year. I mean, the entire room left rather than even entertain the idea that he might try another year. Obviously, Wilson came back, or Isaac, as you call him. Have you ever noticed that Spence is on a first-name basis with everybody? I noticed that on this show. You call everyone by their first name.
David, I'm a man of the people.
Yeah, you never use last names.
I am a friend to all.
Okay. Well, anyway.
You want me to start calling you Fox?
No. But, I mean, like I refer to Cam Rising as Cam Rising.
And I like Cam or Cameron.
Yeah.
Because we're friends. We hang out when I'm off air.
But at any rate, so it's that there's that two sides to it. Now, the farther away we get from this, and you know this, in 10 years, we may look back on, Cam Rising, he won 2 Pac-12 championships and took the Utes to the Rose Bowl twice. Maybe they don't think so much about the last 2 years. So, but time heals those things, and, we'll see where that ends up.
He should be remembered as a legend. He just should.
He did great things to get them to the peak.
There's no doubt. And I hated the way he was treated by a certain portion of the fan base. I don't want to be hyperbolic and say all Ute fans were mean to him, because I think most Ute fans now and forever will be like, that kid was a stud for us. I mean, I can remember when the first year Utah was in the Pac-12, we had John Wilner on the show.
Wilner Hotline.
Good knowledge, Dave. And the question was, when will what's a reasonable timeline for Utah to win a Pac-12 championship and go to a Rose Bowl? And based off of other examples of schools that had entered that conference, he said probably 20 to 25 years.
Wow.
Right? And you know what? At first, we're like, dude, that sounds... And then you kind of dig into the research, and at the time, we were coming off like the Pete Carroll SC, and there's Oregon, Washington, and there were a lot of elite teams, and then there was kind of a group of has-beens that hadn't cracked the code and broken through. And the fact that Cam was under center, when they did it, at an expedited time rate if you look at it from 30,000 feet. Cameron Rising should only be remembered as a legend here in Salt Lake.
Yeah, and if you experienced those games, by the way, if you went to, did you go to the Rose Bowls or the Pac-12 championship games?
Of course.
Okay, so
Never missed a Utah football game in my life.
It's another world. It is another world. Those Pac-12 championship games and the way the Utes just dominated in them. And then going to the Rose Bowl, the fan base is just, it's crazy. That stadium, I've told you this, is a dump. It's a terrible place to watch a football game when it's filled up. It's not bad if it's a UCLA game that's got maybe half capacity. But that aside, just the event of being there and what they were able to do behind Cam Rising was just phenomenal. Those are just unbelievable experiences, and you won't experience anything like that again. I mean, certainly the Fiesta Bowl was really cool the way that happened, and obviously the Sugar Bowl and beating Alabama, it was just that same kind of feeling. But there was just something about the granddaddy of them all and getting to that game, and wow, it was just it was amazing. And I hope long term and I believe that's what he will be remembered most for.
So Coach Witt also asked today, because we had not heard officially comments from Kyle on specifically, the departures of Keanu Tanavasa and Cam Calhoun, the two names that when you saw the alert, you're like, oh, that one hurts. They're Sunday players. They're both playing in the NFL if they stay healthy. And, Keanu releases on his social a scripture. His father follows up with social posts about the heavens opened and we followed God. And Kyle said this was all NIL.
Yeah.
He said that was the main impetus. And that, I think, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but there's already this feel in the marketplace that BYU might have some things figured out with the NIL stuff that Utah still needs to figure out. Not saying that gap can't be closed. But I don't think that was received all that well from Ute fans. Like, well, wait a second. If it was only money, why didn't you match the offer? Because he's that good. So, I don't know. Found that to be interesting.
Well, there are a number of factors. We've talked about this. Money is up top. Girlfriends and relationships are a big part of it as well. Don't forget that. And I'll just leave it at that. But I thought it was interesting that Morgan Scally also addressed this. Do you remember when he was asked about losing? I think they talked about Calhoun and a couple of others. And he said, we go through this every year. Mm-hmm. We lose someone, whether it's the draft or NIL, whatever it is. And every year we come back with a great defense, a great replacement. Mm-hmm. And he didn't even seem remotely worried about it. And he and his staff, those defensive coaches, Sharif Shaw and the others, really do a nice job. And obviously you've got to be able to pivot in college football because of how quickly things can change. And I believe they're going to do the exact same thing. He said all the right things. I liked listening to Morgan. Can I call him Morgan? Am I on our first name?
No, we're fraternity brothers.
Coach Scally.
I've known Morgan for 25 years.
I'm going to go with Coach Scally. Because
yeah, you do that, but that's my guy. That's guy Morgan.
I don't want to step on that.
I call him Scals.
But I just felt like he sounded like a head coach today. He didn't. I mean, I'm not saying, okay, we know this is how he's always sounded, but there was something a little more there was a leadership quality just in today's press conference that I enjoyed. And was it just me, or did Beck actually sound a little bit like Whittingham? I'm talking about just the tone of his voice. I thought it was interesting. One other quick thing that jumped out at me, Whittingham at the very beginning when they were asking about Beck bringing in that spread offense and the quarterback can get out and run all that. And Whittingham immediately said, well, we want to be balanced. And I thought, oh, here we go again.
Of course. Porter, will you make it clear to the University of Utah that I don't agree with Dave that Morgan has never been a good leader until this year?
That's not what I said.
We just make sure
I
that
said he's
Dave.
taken it to a whole new level.
No, you can have your opinion.
That's not.
It's all right.
That's not at all what I said. His sister actually lives in my ward.
No, you can't make up for it now.
So,
Morgan, that was Dave. That wasn't me. I always thought you were a great leader.
Morgan and I go way back too. So nice try.
It's my fraternity, bro.
You were in the same fraternity?
So I call him Scals.
Did you guys ever get in the hot tub together, or was that there while you were in school?
You don't have to make it weird.
You remember the hot tub in the stadium?
In the stadium, yes. I used to.
Did you ever get in there?
I did not.
Oh, that had to have been disgusting.
I did not. When I was in school, there was barely a student section, and now there's a tailgate lot, and the muss is nuts. So I love what Utah football has turned into. I think it's really cool. David, love you, buddy. What's coming our way on Talking Sports
Well,
tonight?
I got Talking Jazz tonight with the great David Locke.
My guy.
He will be in there. We're going to talk a little bit about some of these great finishes they've had.
Yeah.
Because there's a thought out there. If you can get that, and Locke can't talk about this. No one that works for the Jazz can talk about this. But you and I will agree with this. If you can get a great game like that, like the Atlanta game, that is perfect.
For sure.
Absolutely perfect. You got a great game, a great finish, and you lose. And you get one step closer to possibly getting the number 1 pick.
Zion Williamson in purple wearing number 1.
Yeah.
Love it. Dave.
We've already
you,
got parks
friend.
named after him.
Exactly. Named like half our state after him.
It's all over the place.
Great thing.
He's got banks on every corner.
That's another good call.
There you go.
We'll tell him we named the banks after him. I worked for Carl on Pioneer Day, so I guess we'll have to see. All right, buddy. Great to see you.
Thanks, dude.
All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. 5 o'clock hour of the show is next right here on ESPN 700.